All right, it is now 7 PM, Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, and I call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Mathis,
Here.
Locke,
Here.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Present.
Slager,
Present.
Arlandu,
Here.
Gilbert,
Here.
Meadows,
Present. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Sue. Thanks, Sue.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any items to be removed or added to the?
Nope.
Okay. All right, any public comment today?
None has been submitted.
None, so I can spare everybody me reading that. All right, BPS Partners, Drew. Welcome. Good.
Likewise, good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to report that so far, we've had an awesome start to the school year. There's definitely a vibe this year, and I've been saying this every semester since 2021. So famous last words, but it also feels like there's a sense of normalcy that we haven't had in a really long time, and I've talked to a lot of my colleagues, and they share that sentiment, so let's ride that wave. Having to go back that far reminds me, though, that no matter the circumstances, our members rise to the occasion to make sure that we are there for our students, starting on day one. Last Monday, on opening day, I had the opportunity to speak to the district, and my message was simple and something that I'd like to reiterate to anyone that wasn't there. If we are all serious about giving our students the district that they deserve, we must do it together. District and building administration, the BEA, BESPA, the Board of Education, every single stakeholder, we all have a moral responsibility to work together for our students. In that same vein, the BEA has made it clear since May that the district's recommitment to working with the BEA is a welcomed and necessary step needed to finally address the trust, transparency, and communication issues in the district. Since May, we have seen progress towards addressing those issues, but there is still work to be done. Getting on the same page requires mutual respect and trust, and that isn't something that just magically happens overnight. It takes time. It takes commitment. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, and that's okay. The struggle is worth it because our students are worth it. And my offer to the Board of Education remains on the table. If you're interested in the BEA's view of where we are and where we're going as a district, I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk over some coffee at Limestone. To our BEA members, welcome back, and a warm welcome to all of our new members that are now part of the BPS community. You're all rock stars that go above and beyond for your kids every day of the year, whether it's the first day of school or the last day of school. At our BEA general meeting that we had on Monday, I shared with our members that the single most important thing that we do as a union is support our members so that they can support our students. I also offered my personal philosophy that being union means standing shoulder to shoulder together in solidarity. Regardless of whether you're at the early childhood center or all the way up to 12th grade at BHS, we are all part of the Batavia Education Association, unified in our commitment to our students. And when we are united, we can move mountains. And on a personal note, a special shout out to all of our early childhood and kindergarten instructors for welcoming so many of our first-time students into the Batavia school community. At the end of last week, I asked my son, so kindergarten's pretty awesome, right? And his response, yup. A man of few words indeed, but believe me when I say that coming from him, that answer speaks volumes. Solidarity forever with our brothers and sisters in BESPA. Go Bulldogs. Thank you for listening. Good night and good luck.
Thank you, Drew. Next is Kevin for BESPA. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Brought some water along with me because I'm having some allergy issues with all this weather. So, excuse me. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to just adjust this a little bit. Kevin Boderman with BESPA. For those of you who are not aware, Marcia Schuster, moved over to a position here in RJAC, and I, by succession, moved up to become president of the organization. I have to echo what Drew said. With the short time that we've been back in session with school and classes, everything appears to be off to a very good start with the students and with the organization. In fact, last week, BESPA, primarily the paras and the campus monitors participated in training sessions here at the high school. And then we had a breakout session for just the campus monitors. Steve and Tony helped with those, and Tony led the campus monitoring session. And the feedback that we received from participants for both of those sessions was overwhelmingly positive. I shared some of that feedback with both Steve and Tony, and pleased to report that that was, as I said, very, very positive. I'd like to say that tonight I might go a little bit longer than I typically would, but there's two reasons for that. The first is, this is one of those odd occasions when I really know what I'm talking about. And two, I have the opportunity to talk about people that I truly love. And it's the campus monitor team over at RMS. And by prefacing this a little bit, I had originally intended to deliver this presentation at your June meeting, following that long meeting that you had back in May. Family circumstances prevented me from attending the June meeting, and then on the Tuesday, or the date of the July meeting, that morning I had tested positive for COVID, and I thought it would be a good idea not to come by that day. So after long delay, I get the opportunity to present what I consider to be, and hopefully you will too, a very positive report about my coworkers at Rotolo Middle School, and a team that I think when you hear this, you would be very proud of, and should be very proud of. I have a couple of slides that I hope will help you become a little bit more familiar with these people. And I have to thank both Cindy for keeping these things on the agenda, my time with you on the agenda, and Holly for maintaining these records for the past couple of months. So Holly, if you'll put the first one up, which I think, yeah, here are the faces of the people I'm going to tell you about. And I'll start first with Fran up there at the very top. Fran is our lunchroom campus monitor. And the key role that Fran plays is she maintains 3 big binders containing the student IDs for 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade. And it might sound like a simple task, but these IDs are what the students use to purchase their meals and really move things along during that short period of time that students have to purchase their lunches. And again, it might sound like a simple task. I always thought it was until the one day that I did it last year and messed it up within a matter of minutes, to the point where one student approached me and asked, is Fran coming back tomorrow? And I said, boy, I sure hope so, but why do you ask? And he said, well, you messed this up pretty quickly. Only he used a more earthy term, and I didn't write him up or anything because it was a very accurate way of describing what I had done. And he said, you know, you're going to owe Fran an apology. And I said, yeah, I will. And I did. When she came back the next day, I apologized for what I did. But she got everything back on track rather quickly. But more than keeping that operation running smoothly, Fran has a great talent and skill for building a rapport for these kids. And here's where that's really important. You know, the students will, of course, have contact with their classroom teachers all day. Fran is one of the few adults that during the course of the day these kids will have contact and interaction with. And she's able to build, as I said, these relationships with kids, and I'm able to see this 5 days a week during the course of the year. And so on a Friday, a student might tell Fran, or when she's talking to them and passing these IDs back and forth, oh, I have a birthday this weekend. And so they'll talk about that. But the really neat part is, you know, on Monday or Tuesday, when Fran sees that student again, she'll say, well, how was your birthday? What happened? What went on? And they'll have this exchange and this conversation. And it always reminds me that these are the conversations that you and I used to have at one time with bank tellers or the sales clerks at retail outlets, and all of that's been replaced since we now do most of our banking online or at self-checkouts and things like that. but Fran still maintains that type of relationship with these young students who often get a hard knock for having their faces planted in devices. And as I said, I get a kick out of this because students don't come into the world with phones in their hands, and they don't develop those habits. They learn that from adults. And I always get a kick out of watching Fran interact with these kids for that short period of time, 5 days a week, building these important relationships with them, and them building relationships with her. So like I said, I always think that's a key part that Fran has in her role with our team. The next person I'd like to tell you about is Gabby Juarez. And I think Gabby's probably the youngest member of our team, not just in age, but in service with the district. She's in her second year with us now. I believe the greatest skill that Gabby has, not only in her ability to work with with the students, Gabby's bilingual and brings interpretive skills to her work, which we really learned last year is crucial. We have a growing number of students whose English is a second language, both for them and their parents. And while we have, I think, 3, maybe 4 staff members who are in that role, those are mostly teachers who have teaching responsibilities and aren't always available to interact with the students and, more importantly, with their parents. Gabby has never hesitated to step up and fill that role, to work with parents when they come in, to have documents filed with the school, and as important, to work with students who might find themselves down in student services or in, say, lunch detention, or just have questions for some of these students, particularly last year, it was their first encounter in formal education in the United States. So Gabby was there to help them make that transition, and as I said, never hesitated to step up and fill that gap. So as again, proven her invaluable assistance with the team. The next person I'd like to tell you about is Kiva Fulmer, and where Kiva is, again, another terrific asset is her very just even-handed approach to all students. Yeah, if they are brushing up against adhering to guidelines and things like that, I've never seen Kiva get fired up, get to the point where she might be losing her cool with students. It's just in a very matter-of-fact but direct approach with students. What you're doing is beyond our expectations or not meeting our expectations, and you need to bring it back in. And it's a very effective approach, and it's something that I think is one of Kiva's great assets. Real quick story. Last year, and you're probably aware of this, plainclothes police officers from the Batavia Police Department constantly test building security. They'll test the doors and things like that. We had one instance last year, through no one's fault, they found a defective latch on one of the doors and were able to enter the building. It wasn't as though the doors were propped open or anything like that. It was simply a defective latch. They made it into the building about a quarter of the way up a hallway, but it was Kiva who identified that these individuals were not properly credentialed. They did not have the lanyards they would have if they had entered through the front door and had been raptured into the building appropriately. She stopped them both, questioned them how they got in the building, what they were doing in the building, and then escorted them to the main office so they could be properly raptured in. So she did the job directly by protocol and handled things as they are supposed to do or be. So again, the team did the job as it was intended to be done. Leaving Kiva and moving over to Hillary Kennedy in the middle of there, I need to stop and kind of back up. All the women you see on this page here, they're all moms, okay? And that's a quality they all bring to their job. They all approach the students they work with the attitude of, they're mothers, and they approach all these students well aware and conscious of the fact that they are dealing with someone's children. And I think the one that emphasizes this or acknowledges the most is Hillary Kennedy. And whether she's dealing as many of us were last week, with some emotionally upset sixth graders new to a big building, or as I saw her many times last year toward the end of the year, some rambunctious eighth graders who were feeling the end of the school year. Hillary doesn't hesitate one way or another. That many times last year, I would see her approach a table of eighth grade boys and simply say, as most moms will, you're exceeding or you're not meeting the expectations, and it ends right now. And in a very calm manner, bring things to an end, and without hesitation, without being intimidated by a group of eighth grade boys, and she's a great credit to the team. Marianne Niederman there, as it says, is our lead campus monitor, and I would say there isn't another person in this district, at least I haven't met them, that knows the district's handbook for student conduct as well as Marianne Niederman does. And she doesn't lord that over people. She's not a martinet about it, but if she's going to correct a student's conduct or expectations, meeting expectations, she does it in a very even-handed and informed manner. If she needs to correct a student how they're conducting themselves in the hallways or in a common area like the lunchroom, Mary Ann will do it in a very informed and even-handed manner. If the student walks away from an encounter with Mary Ann not understanding what's going on, it's not because Mary Ann didn't do a job of explaining why they were talking with her. So I always tell people that Mary Ann is probably the school board's best friend inside Rotolo. So this brings me to the last person up there, and this is Chris Evanson. I tell you that I could probably talk about Chris Evanson all night long, but I won't. I promise you that. For those of you who don't know Chris Evanson, she is a long-term employee of the district, but she also embodies what I think is Batavia. It's probably would be easier to list the people in Batavia who do not know Chris Evanson than to list the people who do. And before Chris, she's been with the district for a very long time. She was the head cheerleading coach at the high school for 10 years. And when I joined the district and was a campus monitor at the high school, Chris trained me over there. And so when I learned that Chris was transferring from the high school over to the middle school, I was very happy. I knew we were going to be getting a very talented and personable campus monitor. Now, one of the kicks I get with working with Chris is, if you're not aware of how the system works over there, we rotate time on the front desk, processing people in and greeting them. But one of the great kicks I have is when Chris is on the front desk and young parents come in, and Chris will greet them, and it'll be a student or a parent who Chris once had as a student on the cheerleading team. And all of a sudden, there's a connection because that parent now has a student at the middle school, and they're talking about that parent's days as a student at the high school when Chris had her as a student on the cheerleading team. And it always reminds me of something that people have told me over the years since my wife and I moved here to Batavia in 2003, which is Batavia is like a larger version of Mayberry, that you will constantly run across people you know, and Chris is like a living embodiment of that. But the real thing that I think makes Chris Evanson stand out, I saw this at the high school and I've seen it time and time again at the middle school, is Chris has this incredible gift. And if you'll pardon me for saying it in these terms, I consider it more of a blessing. That Chris has an incredible ability to connect with young students, particularly females, who in years ago when I first entered the field, we would call these students, or they were labeled as at-risk students who, for whatever reason, they were finding themselves in a position where they were making decisions or involved in situations that were jeopardizing their academic careers. But Chris has this ability that, whether it's from her years as a successful businesswoman or her years in this work and in her position, that she is able to connect with these young girls, speak to them in a very direct manner, make a connection with them, and help them find a way to get themselves back on a very positive track, whether it's academically or just behaviorally, and help them put themselves in a more positive direction. And it's something, you know, whenever I see it, and I see it a couple times a year, it leaves me in awe that Chris has that ability to connect with young people who really do just need a little bit of guidance to put themselves back on a more positive track. As I said, I could go on talking about Chris, all night long. I won't. But this is a very positive team. You have assembled a great team. Campus monitors don't always get the recognition they deserve, but this is a team that I think the entire district ought to be proud of. Dr. Kim has met many of these people. You know, Steve helped put the team together. Tony knows many of these people from working with them. I know Josh has worked with these people, or several of them, when he was over at the building. You have a wonderful team of administrators there at the middle school. There's no doubt Tara has a good team around her. You know there's a boatload of wonderful and talented educators there. I just wanted to let you know about an exceptional team of campus monitors. I know all of you have busy schedules, but if you ever get the time in your day to stop by and meet some of these people face to face, I encourage you to do that. You won't be disappointed, even if it's for 5 minutes, to meet some of these folks and just let them know who you are and just to say hi to them. I told you I was going to be a bit long. I hope you're not disappointed that I took up so much of your time. Oh, Holly, would you mind going back? Because this is one of our favorite pictures. It's a good-looking group. We'll try to put you on our mailing list for this holiday season, so you get a look at us. But one of the nice things about the team is, you know, there's no reason why we can't have a little bit of fun doing this. And Evanston deserves credit for this too, whether it was her time at the high school or here at the middle school. She makes a big effort of building staff morale for all the employees. And as I said, she deserves credit for that. But that was our Christmas card from last season. So thank you for your time. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin.
We'll see you again next.
All right, no student ambassadors today, I presume?
Holly, thank you.
Okay.
For all that.
So board liaison committee reports, I know some may have started, but everybody's just kind of getting their notifications. I think this meeting's set up. I've seen some of those, so. Anyone have any committee reports at all yet? No? Okay. All right, for the next month. Consent agenda. According to our board policy, we designate a portion of the agenda as a consent agenda for those items. We do not usually require extensive discussion before board action. These items are generally routine, recurring, be grouped together for efficiency. Steve, would you like to walk us through the dance card for the night?
Absolutely. 4.1 is the approval of the July 23rd, 2024 meetings, or meeting minutes. 4.2 and 4.3 is the approval of the August 1st, 2024 special meeting and the closed session minutes. 4.4 is our personnel report. It's quite large. The HR office was busy, I would say, in end of July, August. We're used to that. But I did want to highlight, you know, we've had a lot of discussion in the last couple of years about our parapro issue, and I don't think we're all the way there, but we're definitely in a much better position than we have been the last several years. I think, if I counted right, I think we hired, if you look at that report, I think we hired 9 paraprofessionals, and I think 5 paraprofessionals maybe resigned, so that still is +4 to the good. And when you add in our contract, some of our contract paras, I think we're, instead of looking at a deficit of like maybe 14 to 16 the last few years at this time of the year, we're probably more like 3 to 5 at a handful, if not lower. And again, it remains very fluid. I'd like to give a shout out to Diane Cronin over at AGS. She called me yesterday with a community member standing at her desk saying, this person is interested in being a parapro. Can she go visit the ILP program at Grace McWayne? And we connected her with Jeff Modef, and I think she, that community member went there today, and hopefully we can get her hired, because that's an area that we definitely need help. We did extend that additional pay internally. That didn't necessarily get us additional parapros, but it is getting more people from the outside that are coming in and joining the organization. So that's been a real positive. We're not all the way there yet, but we are definitely in a better position than we have had since the start of the 2020 school year. So that's a positive that I wanted to share with the board. 4.5, we have our monthly payroll and bills. 4.6 are our donations, and we would like to definitely thank Office Depot and Grad Images for their donations to support our schools and our students. 4.7 is our curriculum and special education contracts, and then finally 4.8 is the approval of our consent agenda.
All right, anyone have any questions or comments?
Yep. So on the personnel report, just a quick question. I see Cindy Conforti, she's a JBN, says kindergarten enrichment 0.5 and says paraprofessional. So is she a paraprofessional 0.5?
She's actually both. If I can pull that up here, where does it say it? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't put it in 0.5. Yes, she is a a lot of times we do this, if you've paid attention the last few years, again, to address the personnel challenges we've had, we've sometimes have partnered positions together, and so yes, that is definitely an omission, and Cindy is not 1.5, but she is 0.5 on both of those positions, so thank you for noticing that. We can make that adjustment.
And then, really quick, down at the bottom, it says Brooks Cybernagel, seasonal curriculum and construction, curriculum and instruction. I'm just curious what that is for.
During the summer, we often hire seasonal staff members. A lot of times, these are like Batavia high school graduates who are in college. And you'll see them sometimes for tech, sometimes for operations. And then over the summer, we have, the last few years, we've employed them to support the curriculum and instruction department. They're doing a lot of copying, printing resources and materials for our early childhood, kindergarten students. And we've had the same person in place for the last couple of years. She had to go back to college on like August 5th. So we hired Brooke to kind of fill the void before school started. And I don't know if she's still with us or if she's leaving soon. And she's off to college. Yeah, she's off to college.
That's
So
what I was wondering,
it was a very
seasonal.
brief window.
Here and gone.
But yeah, that's what we do. And trust me, if you're here in the summer, you'll see lots of things happening with materials for our students.
And then, so 4.7, the curriculum and education contracts. I'll start at the top. Danette Myers, let me pull up mine real quick. So she is employed with Partners? Is that what that is for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, I guess, she's going to be helping with co-teaching training, English learner support, and paraprofessional development in newcomer. So I'm just, like, I guess my question is if do we have an EL person? Like, is there someone on staff that's strictly EL? And I'm just curious if that Danette Myers doesn't work with them, and rather that EL person give the support to our district employees and provide the co-teaching training. Like, I don't know who leads that in our district. Like the co-teaching training, the English learner, the newcomer support, which that might be something new because of the influx of immigrant children.
Yeah, the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of newcomers to the district, and just providing support to our staff and how to navigate some of those relationships and language barriers. We have a pretty small curriculum department, so Jen Hicks oversees the EL department, so they've been meeting the past couple of days to go through curriculum reboots, and Danette is a support that we can contract out to work with those teacher teams on those areas that they need. We've not done co-teaching with Danette, that's something new this year, but Danette has provided EL support during summer curriculum week and with teams, especially at Storm, for the past couple of years.
So we've used her in the past for the EL support.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have we used her, and then have we used her for the professional development before?
The professional development?
Yeah,
General professional development, yes. So she's delivered a lot of newcomer professional development to our staff last year and the year before. But that's a continuing need for us.
and then the Angie Sutherland, so is she a consultant for the region?
She works for the ROE, and then we get days from her to support our BPSU program.
So, so the BPSU, that's our significant, that's our program. And she's going to do, it says there in the support educators in their efforts to meaningful implement curriculum, build relationships, and utilize technology in a remote, blended, and hybrid learning environment. So does that mean it's kind of like she's like a tech, more of a tech person? Is that what that's doing? Like, is she rolling out tech programs or?
No, it's more instructional coaching. She uses technology. She tries to infuse technology, but her expertise is really in instructional coaching. So getting teachers to kind of look at their classroom, look at their instructional practices, identify areas where they could be improving, and then to work with them along the way to track that improvement.
So we don't have instructional coaches here?
We do. But this is to support the BPSU program.
So I guess it's like, why don't we use our own instructional coaches to support the BPSU program? Because if it's our program, like, we can't go to Geneva, you can't go to St. Charles for it. So I'm just curious as why we have to have an outside person rather than our own instructional and technology individuals in our district to do it.
We could, but we feel like all of our coaches have like full caseloads managing their building. So this is extra.
And then the McNeil Psychoeducational Consulting, are we contracting them because we're currently down 2 psychologists? Or would we have them even if those positions were filled?
No, I'd much rather have them filled. This is a fill-in because of the lack of school psychologists.
Specifically at Rotolo.
Right. Okay. And then the Sun Belt provides a special education. So if I read it correctly, Sun Belt is using Voco Vision, and the Voco Vision will provide us with the services for, the person will assess the individual over the computer, is that what that is?
Mhm.
Okay.
And Sunbelt focuses on, like, for each 504, for IEPs, you have to have a nurse review all of that paperwork and do a file review. Or if a student has a medical issue which is causing them to need accommodations or modifications, you have to have a nurse be a part of that team. And
So
we
will the
don't-
nurse be a part, so the nurse is with Sun Belt, or is it our district nurse?
We prefer our district nurse,
Uh-huh.
but there's so much to do that this person is providing help with those evaluations.
Okay. And I'm just
Or
curious.
this company, I could say, not person.
So, and just curious, because it's the Voco Vision, it says it's done over the computer. Is that preferred, or would rather we have it in person?
We would rather have it in person, but it's hard to find people to come in for those short periods of time.
That's all I have for that personnel report, or for that section.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any
those
other
contracts do highlight our need for certified school nurses. So certified school nurses have both a teaching degree and then they're an RN. And then school psychologists, they have advanced training and they are very difficult to find these days.
We're hopeful. We have a current RN who is working on, who's employed by us, who's working on her CSN licensure, and it should be completed by the end of the semester, and we're hoping to hire that person for the whole second semester. And then we will be fully staffed at the CSN level to highlight the fact that, yeah, we've had parapro issues the last few years. We've definitely had psych issues at Rotolo, and we've also had some CSN issues.
But we're not the only ones.
We're definitely not the only ones.
Okay, any other questions on consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
By
Second.
Aaron, second by Sue. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Meadows,
Yes?
Sliger,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas,
No.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item is reports. Starts with FOIA requests. Tom, anything to share?
We had 2 requests this month, and both were provided. That's it.
Thank you. Next is treasurer reports. Tony?
Nothing out of the ordinary for the treasurer's report, but I did add a little bit of a narrative to that report, which is not typical. That helps to explain what's in the attached file. So if that's helpful to you, please let me know if you're looking for more information that might otherwise be helpful.
Any questions or comments for Tony on that? All right. Next, our policy updates. Brad.
Sure. At our last board meeting, we had a discussion around our bullying and harassment policy, so I just wanted to continue that conversation. Holly's gonna just show you like one feature that Dave and the tech team have been working on. So if you navigate to, and this isn't deployed to all of our policies yet, but because this was an item of discussion, Holly, will you unclick the button there? So typically, you would go to our board policy manual, and you would see the board policies as they're adopted. But the tech team has been working on something that I think increases the transparency of the changes that the board might adopt, which I think is really helpful for the community. So when a policy is being considered for changes, they're gonna have that red view proposed changes. You can click on that and see a redline version of that policy. So in our last conversation, we talked about there was in late spring, there was a new bullying policy put out by the Illinois Association of School Boards for our review. And you can see that in the redline version currently there. Just a couple of like highlights. If Holly scrolls down, you can see a couple of areas of red. You can see that in that first area of red, they talk about the protected classes that are there, that we want to make sure that they're listed there. And then further down, it's just a strikeout. Further down, there's a little piece about some of the timelines. We talked about 24-hour notification for families that their child was involved in that potential bullying incident. That is in that redline version.
We don't have this, do we?
It's available online.
It's on-
So if you go to that policy,
But it's not in here, okay.
it's not in the board book, no, but
Okay.
if you go to that.
That's what I just.
So that is something I think that really helps kind of show what potential changes are out there. So if the community has feedback about that, that gives an opportunity, I think, for them to see what is potentially changing there. I think it's helpful probably for the board too, to consider any of those changes. So just wanted to kind of highlight that kind of progressing tech feature that I think brings transparency to the board policy process. As we talked about last time, we are required to submit our board policy for this particular policy, 7180, bullying, intimidation, harassment, to the state of Illinois for review, which is why we use the press version of it, because we know that it's compliant with school code and the updates to the law.
So one additional piece, thanks Brad, I wanted to add is that, board, as you know, we've talked about a board committee, right? Comprising of the board, 2 representatives, and then partnered with the administration. And so if you're wondering, well, is there a reason why this is coming out ahead of it? It's to address the timeline that Brad has illustrated to the board so that we could get a second read for you by the September board meeting before we submit it into the data portal for ISB. The other piece is we are going to be meeting, Raquel, Aaron, and I, we're working on a date to actually bring us together to kind of start working on all of our board policies so that, because as you notice, you've probably seen in every board policy, there's a reference to different other policies that might touch this and other legal references. So aside from this particular policy, there are other policies that we will have to take a look at. And so for the board, that opportunity will be coming from our representatives on the board and then eventually the whole board for review and conversation or discussion.
So I know we're gonna work on this in the committee, but is sort of the plan that for the community, we would do something like this, where we're looking at a policy, we would have a period of time where they could see old, proposed new, review it, and then another board meeting. It's like sort of a grace period to digest it, before we implement, or not really?
I mean, it is, but, you know, one of the things that Brad pointed out is we belong to the Illinois Association for School Boards. They have an actual commission of attorneys who review the new laws and then take a look at the board policies that exist in their press manuals, and then make the recommended changes that boards take. And so specifically to 7180, the state of Illinois is collecting evidence from school boards that you have adopted their new policy. Otherwise, they are maintaining a spreadsheet that shows which educational agencies are out of compliance and have not approved it.
So typically when we do policy changes, so you mentioned a second read, what is the timetable usually like if you have to do a first read, second read, and approval, like what we do with the budget, right? Is that kind of similar to the timetable we would normally look at, or?
Just
what is that
typically,
usually?
the second reading is the evening of the approval. So the first read, and then your second reading is the approval, the evening you would talk about. And then vote.
So when you say
Varies.
first reading, is that like when are we working on the actual policy as a board? Do we work on that, decide on it, and then we let a month go by and then do a first reading, let a month go by and do a second reading? So for like this one, how would this be a first reading then?
So that's actually, great question. That's actually why I'm raising that this specific policy we're bringing to you collectively as a whole board right now. The second reading will take place at the September board meeting, only because we're still working on getting our policy committee going here. So we're, detailed review and potential like language questions in a policy that's being recommended for a change would occur is at that board policy committee. But then the representatives of the board will bring that to the board on the first reading and walk through as a board all the changes that are being enumerated in the press policy changes. That's how it'll typically happen, Danielle. Right now, so like I'm saying, that's not happening this way right now, because we just agreed as a board to create the policy committee of the board, right? So right now, this is why with where we're at, we're bringing this to the board for a conversation. All of the red line changes you're seeing are exactly what IASB has recommended as the board policy changes.
I gotcha. What happens when we do adopt the policy, and so it sounds like we're doing this just for the sake of filing with the state in a timely manner, correct, by 9:30? I mean, that's what it sounds like. So if we do go adopt this the way it is, where is our language as far as the conversation we had at the last meeting, the questions that are still kind of on the table, as far as our understanding of like, do we need to implement other changes? Because I don't think that we've had time to do that. And you sent some great information as far as like SB 90 and some of the other things, and I don't see that information necessarily shows up in our policy the way that I would feel comfortable coming from the board. So what does that look like for us if we were to okay this version now, but knowingly, like, I don't think that this is everything that we need.
So I would imagine some of what, you and I have talked before about it, I would imagine some of that would appear in our potential board policy procedures, like the procedural aspects, which are things that come with a board policy. So, an example, there's a board policy on student fees, right? With that board policy, it just enumerates specifically how we govern student fees. But procedurally, there are ways that we create forms and adjust to whenever that policy changes, or the needs of, if we're moving from no more cash in hand to a completely digital electronic way of collecting it, there might be new forms that we have to update, and we would just update those as a procedural item. So to your point, we do have forms, we have reporting mechanisms. If those are things that we see that need to be changed and altered and we get the feedback, those are things that the board doesn't necessarily have to approve through the policy. Those are things we work together as an administration and with each building's committees and edit, update those documents.
So what happens if we don't adopt this because I know I personally didn't walk in here understanding I was doing a first reading. I still don't have an understanding of, again, some of the things that we had talked about. I don't think we fully circled back on everything, closed those circles and understanding. So I want our policy, especially personally, I want the policy, this one specifically, I want to make sure we do it right. And I want to make sure that we're thinking about all of the questions that we've had. Again, we're not responsible of how you guys function it, but without this being where it needs to be, there is no accountability. I don't think it's very, like, it can be strong, but I think we've already acknowledged some of these little gaps that we have. So without that being in there, well, if I'm not ready to move forward, and if anyone else felt that way, what happens? Like, what happens?
I'm not entirely sure, other than one thing I do know, Danielle, is that the state is monitoring which districts submit the policy, right, that's been adopted. There's a spreadsheet that they have, that they publish on their website under this particular area.
Yeah.
As far as your desire for the conversation piece, I'd probably contend the board can have that conversation right now with each other so that you can, together as a team, put thoughts on the table together so that there's some understanding of what you may want us to take a look at, under the red line version by the next board meeting, and give us time to review what those potential language changes and thoughts are that you guys are looking at in the policy.
I don't know, the red line, so the red line is what, IASB,
IASB, right? Yep.
they want to see every district basically implement this in their policy, right? Like, this is the minimum that we need to do to comply, right? The red lined information, like that's that. So if we were to submit this as is, I guess I don't know if I understood, perhaps. If we were to submit this way just to comply with the deadline, what can we as a board continue to have a discussion to amend this policy without any other issues?
I think so.
That was gonna be a question I was gonna ask, is like, okay, so let's just say we recognize we need to do something to meet our requirement. Is there a way that we could still continue the conversation about this one to see if we need to amend it at a subsequent board meeting after submission, if there's consensus on making those adjustments? So that we can continue the conversation, because I don't think you have to adopt a policy and then not talk about it for another year.
No, I don't think
Right.
so either.
So,
I mean, I think one of the purposes of this new committee is gonna be so we can have those conversations and take a little deeper dive and the board can have a little closer touch.
Yeah, we sat down, I know that this won't be the case for all, but we did have an entire meeting. I submitted questions 2 months ago regarding this, and we have had a discussion, which I know we're not gonna have for every policy, that's gonna be what the committee's for. I don't wanna see us drop this.
it's fair, I don't think we need to.
I don't wanna drop it for a month, I don't wanna drop it at all, because of the way that, just things just naturally fall off. We're already in this discussion, we're into the school year. So, I thought I was coming here today to get the questions answered and everything like that, but I do understand we need to comply. I'm willing to do that for compliance as long as we can revisit this, but with movement. So when we talk about the board committee, you're gonna have 2 people who are gonna sit down and read this policy, right? Let's just say it's this policy, okay? And then what are they doing? Are they gonna say, hey, guys, we need to act on this? Are they gonna be recommending that we make amendments? Like, what's happening here? And then where does that come to a board discussion with all of us?
So that would I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
I was talking to everybody. Okay. Yes, you.
Yeah, so that would actually, spot on. It would come back, the 2 committee members would report back to the entire board and share what was covered, The administration would help develop the memo before the 2 board representatives, so we'll capture minutes, update what the changes are from the discussions on the policies, and then they would walk through the thinking. But then the board would have the opportunity then at that time to weigh in and contribute to any of the policies being reviewed and discussed.
Okay. I don't know do you feel like that you guys need to review this one when we've already been talking about it as a board in order then to have another discussion? This has already been on the table. I'm okay, if that's the progress, the procedure, I would hope that this is the first thing that you guys are reviewing, so that it comes back to us right away, but it seems like we're kind of going backwards then.
We're having a meeting to talk about it, so I can't really, Danielle and Tom and I are gonna get together and talk about it, so. Raquel, I'm sorry. So I imagine this probably would be the first thing, so, we were gonna have a meeting to talk about it, actually, so. I mean, I know we do have some pretty detailed things that we were talking about at the last meeting, and I don't wanna talk for you, Raquel, but,
I'd say my main concern, like, I should say that. So my first thing is let's get compliant, and then let's amend to fit our needs. That's where and that's not just for this one, it's
Any
for across the
policy.
board. Cause that's, I wanna be compliant,
Yeah.
cause I don't know what happens if we're non-compliant.
Well, we already are with this one, so right, like, we're already non-compliant in the way that we're not in my opinion, we haven't
Right, we haven't
it in
reviewed
2
certain
years.
policies and, right.
Yeah,
So that's my goal, is to get compliant and then we amend
okay,
to fit our needs.
so I think what it would be is we wanna get in compliance, and if the board has other aspects of the policy that we wanna look at closer, that's where we would step in to make further refinements.
I guess, am I the only one that's looking at this? Like, we know it needs amendments, we know that it's not serving our community correctly, am I alone in that?
No, we agree with
No,
you, we're
I
just trying to
agree.
get in
Yeah,
compliance.
we agree with you.
I think there's a commitment to bring it, I mean, I'm hearing at least from people, a
I
commitment
just-
to bring
so-
it forward again.
I'm a little concerned that things move slowly and understandably, right? So we're going to get compliant, and there may be quite a few other policies that we're not compliant with. So months can feasibly go by, months and months and months, before this goes back on the table. And this should be a priority, is keeping our kids safe. We have 2 things that we have to do for kids. We have to, provide them access, and we have to keep them safe. Okay?
So, I would say, like, if the board wants this to be the first policy review, then I would have no problem being that once we're compliant, then we give it that second scrub to further refine it to where we need it to be.
I think that's really the purview of the 2 of you, with
Yeah.
guidance from others, to determine what are the most important ones to address first. I'm not aware, and I just kind of asked Tom, and he's probably thinking about it, I'm not sure there's many other policies that you have to have a compliance on. They're just, like, when they come from press, they're recommendations from the minds of the legal attorneys. You can adopt them at whatever rate you feel is important. A lot of times, we may find ones that this is an urgent issue, we're gonna go ahead and adopt it, and then we're gonna double back again to talk about it, to see if there's some things that need to be done. Because this group's gonna kind of not only look at policies for whether we think they're out of date, whether they're not appropriate for our needs, or also if they're, if they just, how do I put this? If they kind of rise to the level of like need and when they need to be adopted in urgency, right? This one's clearly has urgency, and that's why it's kind of going out of the proper sequence that we would like to do.
Yeah, but we're like, it's like we thought about the committee, and part of that was because of this, and now it's like we're taking it out of order. We were talking about bullying, we were talking about reviewing this, we were getting questions answered, and part of this, it kind of came up, and I think part of our other discussions, we should have a committee. Now that committee is taking priority of this discussion. And that's how I'm looking at it, because we've had this, put on an agenda since June, and here we are in August, and we're just gonna put it backwards again. And that doesn't make me super comfortable. We've had a little progress as far as having an open discussion. That's it. So I don't know. I'm not super comfortable putting it back on the
I
back
mean,
burner.
I understand your fear, right? Like if it gets, kind of feels like it's getting backburnered, as it were.
It is.
Right? And if it is backburnered, then it's mostly out of being able to try to meet the compliance requirement. And the past performance, I guess, would be from your perspective of saying, hey, it may not come back, like if we all commit to it, and maybe it doesn't come back, or it gets pushed behind it. I don't hear that from other people that are talking right now. I think it could come back at the very next meeting to continue the discussion.
Can I just maybe try and help alleviate some of the concern about the status of some of the work? One thing I do want to share with the board is that all of our administration has gone through some retraining over the summer. And then based on some of the concerns heard, I know Principal Piatek has also spent time with her administration and the deans in looking closer at some of the protocols that they have at the middle school. Again, that is born out of the conversations that have been occurring since the May board meeting. And then over the summer, that was part of the intentional work that our leadership team was working on and designing. The other aspect is ISB has issued a template on, I know data had come up, right? We had talked about data as a board together. And so data is another aspect that we're actually looking at right now as well. One of the things we are going to do is more than likely adopt the template that ISB is suggesting, because we have to enter this data at the end of the year. And so for us, that takes us into Power School and making sure we're formatting the data so that it meets what the state's asking us to do. Now, one of the things that I know the board had talked about at one point, it might have been the June board meeting, possibly July. You had asked about what type of data is it that we keep versus what has to get reported. And for us, we do maintain data that goes all the way down to the detailed level on the students and identifiers, right? The state is asking us, though, to submit types of data codified in a manner that makes sure it's not identifiable. But obviously for us, our administration, especially at the building level, maintain the detailed records, because if they're looking into the matter, they need to have the record and know who they've spoken to, et cetera, and what the incident was, so there's a descriptor to it. And I know the other question was just trying to make some efforts to make sure that our visibility and knowledge and understanding and education piece for students and staff was occurring. I know Holly immediately within the next time frame since that board meeting went and visited with the principals and took time to make sure, like I think we had mentioned to you all, bathrooms is one of the common areas that our buildings will put up signage and information on how to report something. Holly, I know, confirmed and went around and made sure that our buildings were being, if there was any blind spots there, that they were taking care of that, if there's any gaps, any of that stuff. So I know those are definitely the concerns that were shared, and that's hopefully at least sharing out and reporting that that's where we're at. I know at the July board meeting, the one thing on some of the questions, I'm like trying to look at notes. And then from the building level teams and our C&I department, we're, I would say, approaching this from kind of a solution based approach. So one of the things that I shared with the board was the infographic that shows at a large scale, systems wide, how we're trying to promote the educational components for the social emotional side to what policy 7180 addresses. And that is the work that our teams have been doing. It's been coming from our student services team, our school social workers and counselors, and the administration at the building level, and then our coordinator here at the district in assisting them with all that. She's got special certifications that surround this type of work. So that's kind of like that large scale side of things. At the building level, our teams are definitely working on some of the resources to ensure that there's supports. For example, one of the contracts that was approved under consent is with the Family Counseling Services. So those are aspects and opportunities that we offer to try and help in a restorative manner when there are issues, that we have a list of different resources, like a good toolbox for us to go to that might work for what families are comfortable with or what the student's comfortable with. Is it perfect and is it done? My answer is no. That is merely an update I'm just trying to provide for the board at the moment.
So I'd say, for me, and like, if we don't have any other pressing policies, like, not that we can't multitask, but I would rather do one and get it done right the first time and then move to the second one, unless something comes out where we have to change and amend another policy like right away. Like, that's my goal with this policy review, is like, let's look at them, let's see where we need to fix it and amend it. And, I mean, the bullying one, like, I know that will be on my first and foremost, is to get it right. And unfortunately, I don't know when our meetings are gonna be. I can't give you a timeline because we gotta set it up. And you know how often we're gonna meet. So I don't want you to feel like I'm not putting it on the back burner. But again, to get it right, we kinda gotta take some time to get it right.
When you say, okay, so can we not have a board meeting? We talked about that, having a board meeting when we need to take a little more time, allow all of us to digest things. Is that not, can we do that for this specifically? Like, so that we can have more talk time about what we are looking at from for the policy?
So like what you, I'm trying to think maybe what you're looking for would be like, maybe we're gonna meet, we're gonna figure out a meeting time to set this up. Would you prefer, if it's possible, for us to have that meeting before the next board meeting, so we could make adjustments to it, and then at the next board meeting, that would be the second pass, and that would have the refinements of our committee meeting in there already?
Or are you asking for a special board meeting to discuss as a board as a whole? This again? Or to continue the conversation, I don't wanna make it sound repetitive.
I'm a little, I know that you guys want as the board committee for policy review, to look through our policy, see if we have any others that need some attention. And then I understand, you wanna do them one at a time. Why can't you guys do that, and us as a board, we're addressing this? I'm a little lost on that, because we already know as a board, this needs work. So why is this not front and center while you guys are still meeting? You guys can still meet and look at the other policy stuff, can you not? And decide like, hey, yeah, we need to work on this and this, but while we're also working on this,
That's what we're saying, like.
This would be the
this
first
is-
thing we work on,
Yeah, this is gonna be the first one we work on.
right?
So
nothing's
does it
going
have
ahead
to
of
go through the committee? And, because I'm a little confused, why does this one have to go through the committee for you guys to look at it and say, yeah, we need to look at it?
It doesn't have to.
Yeah.
But this is the one that we're doing because we're gonna amend it to make it fit us. So this, again, this is my thing, it's like, so we're
So
gonna
you
do.
guys you guys actually make the changes to
Yeah,
the policy?
Yes.
They make
So
recommendations
when-
to bring
yeah,
to the board.
So let's just say like,
Yeah.
hey,
I didn't
we're
know
gonna
that.
change the.
No, that's why we're talking.
Yeah, this is like, we're gonna change, like, let's just say, hey, we're gonna make, everyone use black pens.
Uh-huh.
Like, we're gonna make that, so we're just gonna bring it, like,
Get
hey, we're
ready,
gonna
it's
amend
coming.
this, you have to use black pens. And we'll bring it, that's what it's saying, like, so, something like that. So we're looking at these the bullying harassment one, we'll get it compliant, and then while it's working to be compliant, we're gonna amend it to fit our needs and what we want
policy to
outside
say.
what the Illinois School Board wants.
Right, to make it Batavia, but
Yes.
yes.
Right.
And then you bring that to the board.
Yeah, we'll say, this is what we feel will help our
So we would probably give
policy.
updates like this, now we're in compliance, also based off discussions, we've made X, Y, and Z changes based off discussions.
And
then
that's at a
there'll be
board
discussion.
meeting under policy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we're doing like what we're doing now, we're talking, and then so let's say I was like, hey, where's this? Then that goes into the change. How does this all happen?
You can make your recommendations, and then, we can discuss
We
it,
can-
the
and
board
just
will
feel,
decide.
I think that's a great idea, we missed that, or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't get kicked back to the committee again. It could all kind of get fleshed out if we feel that the only thing that we may need, dependent on the level of recommendation, is an attorney review.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to kind of get in a bind on something, right? But and make sure we're clear on the understanding of what's a policy and what's a procedure. But beyond that, I think whatever, just like has happened in the past, press makes a recommendation. In the past, individual board members, I think Rob did some, and others have kind of looked at it and said, okay, this is what press says. We recommend this one, don't recommend this one, we recommend this one, we don't recommend that one. They may take, what my expectation would be is, take the, kind of the meeting minutes that Tom had from the meeting we had last month, and see what's missing from this policy based on what was discussed at the last month meeting. Say, these are the items that we think should be incorporated into policy, these are the items that are procedure-based that would be following the policy. And then they can make those recommendations. It's not, their goal is to try to make the policy in alignment with the board's needs, not their particular needs, right? So I don't think the conversation we had last time is lost. I think there's some efficiency potentially in allowing them to meet between now and the next board meeting potentially. And by the way, when they meet, it's a board committee. It is subject to Open Meetings Act.
We have to post it.
We'd have to post it, people can come, whatever they want, they'll review it, they'll talk about it. And then they can then bring it with the heads up, if we want on particular cases, like I think might make sense of, here's what we discussed, and we get about a 2-week heads up on what might be coming, so that we have time to digest and talk amongst ourselves individually, think about it, research, talk to Tom, talk to whomever, and then allow that time for then the discussion to happen in open forum as it's supposed to, and then make amendments, and in theory, if everybody is agreed upon, adopt the policy change.
That, with that one, it's not first reading, second reading, you get to
No,
adopt it, right?
no, no. The first reading and second reading thing is probably because it has to be, like, officially submitted to ISB, or like the budget has to go through a very specific process.
Yeah.
Because of the level of public involvement they wanna make sure occurs.
Yeah, this hasn't been talked about in detail, so I know you guys are like kind of looking at me. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that this hasn't been explained to all of us. And I just want to understand that, like, there are certain things that each of us can catch. Like, when I was reading through, the, Senate Bill 90 that you sent, like, there's a lot of things in there that I think would really help us, right? And it should be stuff that I think our policy does adopt. So I'm hearing that you guys take that information, you look at that, see what applies to Batavia, you take all these things in consideration. You guys make revisions or amendments, whatever you need, suggest it, then you guys will send it to us a couple weeks before we're actually gonna see it. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what I'm hoping happens. That's what
We're
the
working on
intent
it,
is.
so this is a brand new committee, so that would.
We're probably
hopefully-
taking up half the agenda they might have discussed in their first
Sorry,
meeting right
okay,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, which is great, because, I mean, the committee,
Yeah,
this
but
committee
this is good
concept
feedback.
is fairly new, right? Because we're recognizing that with the strategic plan and with this, the bullying requirements, and I'm sure there's other ones, that we want to make sure there's a more diligent review process of policies than we've ever really had to do in the past. So this is a new structure that Tom has seen at other locations that we'd like to kind of bring here, so that it's an efficient conversation, so we stay on point, and we allow people to say, okay, the two of the board members have taken, with maybe help from a third if they need it on a particular topic, has said, okay, we're at least in an agreement and understanding, and then they kind of pitch it to the rest of the group.
Right.
And then that way, the rest of the group can say, okay, I, trust their perspective, I understand what they're saying, but here's this, this, and this. And if everybody goes, yeah, sure, let's do that, we can, if not adopt the policy, we can formalize the language of the policy, and then get it formally reviewed, however it needs to be reviewed, and then adopt it the next month. So,
So this being you, if I could just add a little context, because this is what I was gonna talk to you both about, so I'm glad we're talking about it now. One of the things, when it is a board committee and there are board members assigned as the co-chairs, so for the meeting to even be able to, take place, both co-chairs have to be present in order to meet, the Open Meetings Act. And so that's an example of where, this is why a board committee designation is very different than an administrative, committee, that some of us lead, right? So for this work, another example would be of where, as a board, if there's something that, for example, this very topic, if you would like to be part of the conversation and contribute, you can be there. It's following the Open Meetings Act. The only thing you won't be doing is you're not making actual decision by action. You would be making a consensus to recommend that it does come to a board meeting for the full board review, if that makes sense. So, it's because it's like a committee amongst colleagues, basically. So if you think of it in a different way, maybe, Steve, Tony, and Brad, they lead their own committees, but they don't have the authority to provide the finality of an action from their committee work. It actually comes to me for approval. So it'd be similar, and we're all peers, right? So you're all peers and colleagues, but the co-chairs will lead that conversation. Then at the end, if there's a consensus to recommend, let's take this to the full board, then it's the full board that makes the action and decision on that. So, yeah. Yeah. And it is new, so I get it. If there's other questions, please. Go for it.
Danielle, I appreciate you continuing to dive into it to figure it out. It was a good discussion.
So I got one, I guess, clarifying question. So if we have recommendations for what updates we would like to see in this policy, we can go ahead and submit that to you, right? So,
And you can even come to our meeting.
or come to the meeting, right?
Well,
So
if you're-
we-
join us,
if you
Rob.
That's
can.
what I'm saying,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I guess the way
So-
I'm envisioning is, like, we would host our meeting and we would say, this is the policy we're reviewing.
Yeah.
All the board members would know it, so you have a chance to look at it. And then if you have any feedback prior, please provide it. And then if you can't be at the meeting, we'll take that input,
Yeah.
make recommendations, send a committee report back to the board before the next board meeting, so you have plenty of time to review it. And then we can have a pretty robust conversation, we all can be together.
Okay. And-
Make sense?
and, yeah. it
That's
makes
how
perfect
I'm
sense.
envisioning, but it's up to,
No, I
this
agree.
is new.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sure that there was a avenue for
Oh,
anyone to submit recommendations or what they think some of the language might be, or, you know, so that's there. And then I'm also hearing that the priority is specifically the bullying policy right off the bat here. So this is
Agreed.
the number one priority.
Yes.
Going off there. Okay, very good.
The only thing I would say is, just for record keeping more than anything else, feel free, anybody, to email them directly with your comments. You don't need to run it through me, right? This is that, just copy me and Tom so that we can kind of keep it for record keeping purposes.
And this does not do anything with our emails are to each other, like, we're not.
As long as you just send, like, and Tom, if you can
One-on-one.
confirm, as long as it's like, you send it to one of them,
Uh-huh.
and then kind of copy me, so I'm saying aware of it, I think that's fine.
Okay,
As long as there's no dialogue and back and forth, and it's a one-way street. So what couldn't happen is,
We can't respond.
they can't respond to you, like, I would even hesitate to go, like, great idea, don't, like, just,
Right.
you know,
So it's
thank you
just-
very much,
got it.
acknowledged, and then,
Right.
and then come to the meeting to discuss it, if you decide to. There's gonna be a little
And-
figuring it out.
Yeah, and
As we
then
go on.
the other thing I'm thinking about is, so then when we have a proposal for a policy change, it has to be reviewed by the state lawyers?
Not
No,
state,
so
no.
let,
In general,
good
our
question.
lawyers.
We would probably, depending on what, I would argue that depending on what the amendments are, we may or may not take it to our attorneys. And the reason being is, so sometimes some of the board policy updates are nothing more than legal reference updates in the footnotes. Those are typically when you get presented to the board, it'll say something to the effect of non-substantive changes. I struggle with that word. Right, so what it means is, the policy language itself is not being altered. There was probably some legal case that occurred somewhere where they changed the legal reference and just updated it to a more recent case or something of that effect. The ones that, such as 7180, there's red line changes that exist within the policy. Now, IASB has a team of legal counsel that has reviewed this and recommended it to all member districts, right? If we were to amend some of the aspects of that policy to fit what the board is looking for, I would, under that policy, I'd say, let's make sure, once we're done, let's send that off to our district
Our
legal counsel.
attorneys.
That's our attorneys, just to make sure we're covered, right? Because sometimes what's being recommended for changes is going to be consistent to what school code or Illinois state law or federal law is stipulating, right? Some of the aspects, though, that we talked about, to me, can also be placed under procedures, which doesn't require board policy impact, which is where quicker action can take place. And I think that's where we can be more responsive and act like, so for example, if we start to get feedback that the QR codes or the bathroom signage is just not being as impactful or as effective, right? And it's not something students are voicing back to us saying like, I feel comfortable reporting like that, right? Then we can create new procedural steps as quickly as we need to and work with the relevant stakeholders and groups of employees to make that actually happen. That wouldn't be a board policy.
That's
right?
actually,
The board policy might state something to the effect of a reporting mechanism is in place. That's the policy. But the procedure, you
We
know,
can pick and choose that.
yeah,
Well,
we
that-
would,
You can be
in that
nimble.
instance.
you can be nimble on it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
'Cause
there's more flexibility to it. And again, I think, personally, we're gonna get direct student feedback through the new Panorama survey that we're gonna be implementing this year. And I think that's one of those pieces, right, when we talk about inclusion and feeling belonging and safety, we're gonna hear it. And so if, for example, that I just gave, if kids are saying, I don't wanna report it through that, I prefer talking to my counselor. Then we may have to change on how we advertise and what we look at, right? Even though that's a very acceptable way to do it now, we may have to change the way the posters look or make it more explicitly clear, and I don't know, I'm just trying to give an example off the top of my head right now. To explain the difference between what administrative procedures are versus the actual board policy.
right.
And one thing I've kind of learned sitting here is like, it's really important to distinguish those two, because if you start mandating procedures within your policy, you can't change them without coming back to the board and making those
You- you're not
recommendations.
lim-
Like,
anymore.
if they find out that the QR codes are not working and they get data that says that they need to change to the counselor, they can change that from a Wednesday to a Thursday,
Right.
if they feel it's the best route to go,
Right.
so.
Does our policy have to reflect, like, I know I've mentioned what is it, Tom, you sent it to us, I don't remember the name, it was like Bullying Act, but it's the SB 90. Within that document, there's like one thing that had popped out, I mean, it's a long 50-something page document, but I'm used to reading the stuff from what I used to do, and it's fine, I go through it, and like one of the things that had jumped out was, that every student should be able to report their bullying to whomever they're comfortable with in the building. And so, is that something that and that's something for you guys, but just out of curiosity, like if I was gonna make a recommendation, does that have to be in our policy? If it's here, like if it's part of the bill language, does it have to show up in the language in our policy?
We could probably make it in part of our procedure. Like, so like, if like he said, the QR code's not working, and maybe it's in our policy, but let's say it's not.
Yeah.
So then you can report your instances of bullying through the QR code website or your trusted, BPS employee.
But
So it actually exists in our current policy as it stands right now.
it's in there.
It's
like-
already explicitly
Okay.
stated.
Do we?
Aside from specific named administrative positions, it also goes into stating any staff member with whom the student is comfortable speaking.
I think and part of it was saying that you could have that person with you, is when you were dealing with it. So, so if a kid is like, hey, this teacher is my person, this teacher can come with that student to talk to the dean or whatever. And so, is that because it's a bill, is that policy or is that procedure? Does it have to be listed in our policies?
I believe that's a procedure, I don't think every piece of it, because also, if there's already a state bill that floats out there, sometimes repeating state bills in your policies gets very, very difficult. And by difficult, don't mean hard to do, I mean, you end up, that's like the attorney review, you end up conflicting, so that if the state bill changes then one day, then you end up having to change your policy to match the bill, so the bills always supersede our policy period, am I correct on that? We went through.
Yeah, we have to follow state law, whether your policy
Right.
tells us to or not.
Right, so if the state bill says it, it doesn't matter what our policy says, it has to be followed.
So, no, our policy does not have to quote this.
Correct.
That's what
And in some ways, you might not want it to, but
Okay.
you can make a statement in there like it will follow, like there's probably a statement that says, one of our other policies is, we will follow all state laws, you know?
Right, yeah,
So,
yeah, I just wasn't sure if that's something.
it's a good
that
question,
We have to put in.
very good discussion. Okay,
I would hope so, with it being our policy,
yeah,
yeah.
all right, any
So
other?
I'll just say this, we're gonna
Yeah,
find
wrap
a
it.
time to meet, and then we'll probably let the board know within the next probably 5 business days when we're gonna have our first meeting.
Okay.
Ballpark. So everybody knows that.
And just to reconfirm, we are looking to first read this today as the changes as required. Second would be next meeting to have it put through, but we are all like in agreement that we are doing that with the understanding of amending it.
Well, so like,
We're gonna review it.
policy will be this will be the policy, but we can do our procedures, which amends to fit our needs.
And if need be, just to clarify, if need be, we can modify the policy to tune it to what we want it to be.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
In
asking, yeah.
in excess, and, maybe they get together and they meet, and maybe we could do that beforehand in this, because the first reading and the second reading, correct me if I'm wrong, don't have to be the exact same policy, they can have amendments to it, because that's the whole kind of point of first read, second read.
Right,
Right,
but,
so-
yeah, but we're not going, I just wanna again, I'm just clarifying and making sure that we're on the same page, that we are doing it on this, but we are coming back once you guys do your thing, and we will, with the understanding that we may be amending the same policy that we are looking to approve next
Yes.
month.
Yes,
That's
that's correct. Yep.
That's, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this? All right, any other policy updates?
Any other policy update will come through the committee.
Perfect.
This is the one that we wanted to prioritize.
All right, thank you very much. Actually, one thing I wanted to, I'm gonna question, so we may end up with a mix of ISBE recommended revisions, and then our own personal, like, ones as a board. Inquiry, not an answer that I'm asking for, is can those be like tagged or footnoted in that very nice, in my opinion, kind of redlined document, so that if you're looking at it, you know, this language was recommended by ISBE, and this language is recommended by us.
That's a good idea.
Great idea. Unfortunately, with what we have there, it's not capable of doing that. There's
Okay.
ways that we could indicate that, of course, but not in that red line.
Did you put like footnotes and stuff in there?
No.
Okay.
By
Highlight?
the way, just, yeah, we can
Highlight?
add more features. That's it's something was homegrown for us, and we have other features in mind that we plan on adding, and so it's something that we can,
Put it on the wish list, maybe?
yeah, certainly.
Because I think it would be helpful, because when I'm looking at it, I don't know what was responsive to our conversation
Or what's like.
versus what was required by
Yeah.
the state,
Compliance, yeah.
you
Right.
know?
Right.
And my opinion, it could be like at the end of a sentence, a little parentheses, I, little parentheses, B. I stands for ISB, B stands for board, or something like that, you know?
Some sort of indication.
Yeah, floating it out there, so, okay. All right, next, we now have items for action, so item 6.1, approval or review of the data dashboard.
All right, so board, as I had shared for, tonight's item for you does not have to be acted on tonight. I just want you to be super, super clear about this, because I realize you are seeing this, with fresh eyes and having a first-time discussion. The only reason why I had listed this as discussion and action is in the event that after reading your board book, if you all came to a quick consensus and felt very comfortable with one of the options that are presented to you, then you could act on it tonight. Otherwise, if the board needs more time, we're good to go. Okay, so, having said that, with the adoption, the board's adoption of the district strategic plan, we made sure that we had called out that our data dashboard would be an area that the measurables of our areas of priority are what we are using to be transparent and to hold ourselves accountable to the goals and priorities of our work, right? And so, moving that forward, we're giving you options to take a look at, as a board, what you would like to do in terms of how we interface with the public or anyone who lands on that data dashboard. And in front of you, you have three options. The links that were provided to you will give you an idea as to what each option looks like. And we also provided you with the ability to scale that basically. If you take a look at row 4, that's us doing the work, and we can do it. That comes within the scope of our own abilities, and that would obviously be free in terms of not needing to add any resources to maintaining that version of a dashboard. Row 3 is another style to take a look at. This one does have costs associated to it. Again, we tried to highlight for you kind of just some summary details and what the pros might be to that option. And then we did the same thing for row 2 with ClearGov. All right. So the annual fees, if you notice, are lower. There's, for each of those paid options, there's a startup fee and a setup fee, if we were to go with that.
So I'll just get started. I'm sort of leaning towards option 1 or 2, not the third one. I know it costs money, but I feel like this is what these people do, and so we'll get more the data will be more interactive, and I think the interface might be easier. We won't be figuring it out. If we do it ourselves, I mean, I'm sure we would do a good job, but this is what these people do, and they've been doing it. Like, item 2 is for the city of Batavia, so people are used to using that information. So I'm open to a discussion on all of them, but I'm leaning more towards the first 2 options, even though there is some cost associated with it.
So if you click on those links, do we see the actual,
Yeah, you do.
can we do that here? Or-
So can you go review kind of, like, of the three options, which one is more real-time data? Like, gets updates more regularly? I know one of them is we do the work, I mean, all of them, we do a little bit of the work.
It's more about the layers of data that's presented.
Okay,
Right, so like this, every time I clicked was another layer, right, so you
Right.
have, it could be just, where are we at in completing our 5-year plan?
Mhm.
We're at 70% of it, and that might be all that somebody wants to learn.
right,
Somebody wants to drill down farther into each of the priorities, and each of the key performance indicators under each of those priorities, and if we've accomplished those goals, and what percentage we have completed, and what action items are tied to each one of those goals, and how much those have been completed. All that information is available in all of the systems that we've shown here. However, because this is developed as a layered and dynamic site, it is, the user chooses what layer they want to get
how
to.
far they wanna dive?
Whereas if we create it, it is a snapshot in time.
Okay,
So this is, and you would say, here's the 10 snapshots that we would like displayed on our website page. And those snapshots will be updated twice a year. So these numbers might only be, and all of them updated twice a year. But it's the amount of data, so the accuracy is the same, it's the amount that you want.
How
for-
granular you can get?
Exactly.
Okay.
So what we see here for what we have now, that is what we would keep. There are no ways to add layers into what we see here, like in this one.
on our.
Right,
On
so
our-
that, so basically, it
That's
is
it.
almost like, we could cater what you saw on that page.
Mm-hmm.
So we would say, no, we don't wanna see that indicator, but we'd like to see this one instead. However granular you'd want that to be, or top level you'd want it to be. And then we would pull that report, take that shot, put it up on the website twice a year. And it's accurate to that time. Like I said, and I can show you the example, as you just showed me on your screen, the one for us.
Yeah.
So this is taken from 5 Lab, which is where we put all of our information from our student information system and all the different tests and reports and everything that goes up into it. So this is the current data as of today, and some of it shows year over year, which is somewhat layered, but it's a snapshot. So these numbers really won't change for most of this, because, they only take map tests a couple of times, it's not changing.
Right, ACT
Often.
scores are not changing every week.
Correct.
Right.
So we're providing accurate data to the day that it was pulled.
But with these other websites, people could look at from different, 10,000 feet to
Right.
really granular,
Yep.
basically.
And we could say on those websites, we could put a limit. Like, we could say, we only want it to go down to building level, not to grade level, or not to, you know, whatever layer we want it to stop at, we can put a pause. With this, we would just be able to specifically pick which 10, 5, 30, maybe one tied to each key performance indicator that we display on the page as a static image.
One of the things that's kind of neat about the New Orleans one is that it kind of talks about progress and status, right? Which I didn't necessarily see on, I mean, it certainly is not on the one that we're kind of currently doing. Ours is a,
And we can add dialogue.
yeah.
But not layered, right?
Right.
So like, it could be even that we put our strategic plan up there, and then we make a little picture or link that takes you to the one key performance indicator image that shows the graph or chart. And have a lot of information in there that says, this is how we got to this is the part of the strategic plan this ties to, and dialogue within that page. But something like this shows you, okay, so this would be like for us, our 3 key priorities, let's say, would be shown right here. And this shows you by these colors down here, how far we are in accomplishing our priority number 1, right? Priority number 2, priority number 3. And again, you could go into here and say, all right, here's our priority number 1. Here's the 12 things that we have identified as our action plan to accomplish this. And then next layer could be what the action, you know, each of the data sets that tie to it.
I can see what you said.
But again, it kind of gives descriptors along each of these paths to say what it means, and also gives you its own little percentage.
Do we know what we're going to have on the dashboard? So, I mean, that might be helpful to know if it's just like test scores. I don't know that we need it to be super interactive, but if we're tracking progress of various things that need explanation behind it, I don't think ours will do it. You know, what are we tracking exactly, do we decide?
That hasn't, I mean, I think that's part of one of the next steps. Yeah, I think this is just saying, okay, this is the framework it's in, and maybe right now the question is, do we have one that's kind of robust enough to be able to allow for the depth we may get to, you know? Because I think there's gonna be some need, and I mean, as a person who's tried to kind of work through, particularly like when we were looking at kind of referendum stuff and things like that, there's a lot of data there, and it's like, this is pretty navigable. That I think we would do a great job at it, don't get me wrong, but I think there's ways that some of these other kind of template-ish things would allow it to get a little bit more rich and feel more kind of approachable as well. I mean, I love a bar chart as much as everybody else, but when it kind of spins and does fun things, you know, it feels engaging. So,
And again, the data is exactly the same.
it will be the same.
If on the back side of this, literally Jean Marie will, if we decide in one of these, let's say we go with ClearGov, she will throw information into FiveLab, up into Panorama, or wherever the next place is, and in here, click, 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 all at the same time. It's the same exact data, it's just how we are presenting it out and what layers we choose.
So for like ours, we can't say this is strategy 1, and in that layer, then this is under strategy 1, and here's a goal under, we can't do that with ours.
Could we, it would not be dynamic, like in a,
It'd be a
it would
series
be
of
like.
pictures.
click,
Click on this
click-
link, click
yeah,
on this
click
link,
to
click
the-
on
go
this
to
link,
this
click on
page,
this
or
link.
here's the next page, or it wouldn't be like, all right, I saw this number here, and I wanna know the 10 decisions that went underneath that, and here's the 4 goals that they're trying to accomplish. It would just be like a kind of a
Series of
decision
hyperlinks
tree, kind of
almost.
like we would be going here and then into this space and down to the next space.
I mean, I think I like this, and we're gonna be talking about the budget soon, and that's an example of like, some people just want the 10,000-foot view. But I mean, you can get super granular on 100 different metrics on that. So, to your point, I'm sure there'll be some things we're measuring that's pretty cut and dry, pretty basic, but then there'll be a lot where different members of the community are gonna wanna look at it from different levels of granularity. And so I like having that available to them.
Are any of these more facile at inputting the data than the other? Okay.
If we made a decision, how quick can we implement?
I think they were 60 days, because the data's there.
So you have some data to
It's
put
just
in.
Telling it, yeah, it's just telling them
Okay.
where to pull it from or us putting it in.
And Holly, the gap time is due to them doing a site build out to our
The design
specifications,
and
right?
the layout
Yeah,
and
okay.
the
I just wanna make
coding
sure I was clear.
and, yeah.
So the big difference between 2 and 3 appears to be that 3 is more turnkey. They will do the graphics, they will help create it, they will give you the template that you will start to input data in, teach you how to build that so you can build others later. 2, like you highlight there, we're solely responsible for creating graphics, matrix, and the dashboards. They basically give you,
They give us that framework, like that you saw on the City of Batavia site, where it's like, here's the different ways to drill down. We would then, it's like dropping, like when you're designing a website, you
Yeah.
pull this box in and you drop it here. Okay, well, I want a text box here, so I can describe all of the information that I want it to. And I want this to be displayed as a pie chart, and then it will show you what data to pull into the pie chart. So it's a little bit more of a build on our side, whereas the other one, we would say, these are the 12 pages that we would like, or layers that we would like it to have. Here's all the data. They walk us through, they show us how to do it, but they also would create like the first 10, and then if we decide that over time, we would like, here's a new metrics we want, or data set that we would like to show on our dashboard, we would know how to make that 11th one or whatever, and adjust it over time.
or hire them if we decide we need to, for timing to.
We'll
do that.
pay an annual fee for them, as to keep up with any kind
I'm
of
just saying, if
changes
we want
again.
another page or another depth, I'm sure they have an ability to
Oh,
help
for
us
sure.
with that. Because that kind of explains why there's a fairly hefty difference on the setup fee component
Mhm.
between those two.
Yeah,
What's your preference, Holly?
Knew it was gonna come, Holly, the question.
It's tough for me to say. Of course, we went to the City of Batavia because they had the dashboard, got their recommendations, say they love working with them. It was a great process, staff loves it. All positive feedback about the ClearGov proposal, so that was kind of a good starting point for us. I knew we wanted the baseline of what we've had in the past and what we could do in-house, and then I was like, I did research on just regular dashboards, and then this came up as one that many used as an example of a polished place. So then I reached out to that company to get a proposal. The customer service aspect from both of them is very highly rated. Testimonials are fantastic for both of them. I think that as a user personally, and this shouldn't be a reflection of what the community would necessarily want, but having something that is more interactive and easy to navigate and pretty to look at, the New Orleans Public Library, I think, fits that bill.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my inclination, is just because I want it to be engaging and I want it to feel rich when you're looking at it, and so that people will be interested in diving into the information to the point they feel comfortable, so that's my personal opinion.
I would vote for ease of use as the top priority. And ease of. How do I say
Administration?
it? Readability. Like,
Yeah, okay.
Let's keep it simple.
I would throw out there that we don't know the target audience exactly. We don't know what we're gonna have on here. And it's hard for me to imagine spending that much money to put data out there that we don't know is even gonna be looked at. I'm looking at this thinking, wow, the city's spending that much money yearly to have this data out there that I've never seen before. I'd much rather put this money somewhere else. Maybe even take a year to have our dashboard created in-house before we decide to make it pretty. That's just my thought on it.
if we don't do a change in the dashboard, you know, we had talked about when we did the strategic plan that we would have like like, when did we, I think we said 2 times a year that we would get updates kind of on where we're at.
So we'll do a biannual report, the first coming within either December or January for the board, and then the next one coming at the end of the school year.
So even if we didn't have something like that in place, where it's click, the community could still hear potentially, like, hey, this is where we're at on strategy 1, you know, or whatever your updates are. Like, just going off of what RJ is saying, if we try to update ours alone, and it may not have all of the interactive faces behind it, but just kind of see like what data do we actually need to take from the strategic plan? What are we looking at? The public can still access information via like your updates and via the website that we have, correct? Right? Well, that's tough. I hear you, RJ, like we don't know what we're putting on there, we don't know, I feel like people have made it clear they do wanna see like where we're at on things, but I don't even know what we're putting on there necessarily that's different.
Can I, do you mind if I help with that question?
Please,
That you're
yeah.
asking?
Yeah, please.
So, the strategic plan, I would probably say, actually does give anyone who puts their eyes on our organization's plan, an indication of what we are going to be putting on there. Example being, one of the areas call for student chronic absenteeism, and that our goal is to try and reduce that number, to get our students to come to school on a regular basis, right? So, to me, if I were just a parent or a community member, I would just naturally assume, oh, the district's gonna put something having to do with student attendance on the dashboard. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Right, so then, another one, from a teaching and learning perspective, would be like ACT, because the state's moved from the SAT to the ACT this year. So, because it's only a one-time assessment per year, and it comes at the back end of the year, and we don't get the results until the summer. So for us, next year on our dashboard, we would have an ACT score reported, right? And then on our dashboard, year over year, moving forward, we would be able to have that metric there, right? In terms of, sense of belonging, our panorama survey, that's gonna be, administered this, multiple times throughout the year. That gives us an ability to report out what percentage of our students are saying, I feel like I have a safe adult to speak to, right, or connect to, and that we would be able to show that. And obviously, we want that number to hit 100%, but we'll get a baseline going and be able to kind of report that time over time. So, I mean, so when people are looking at that, it's like, we're looking at a focus on how do we foster that sense of belonging for students to be in our schools. Then again, that's where, you know, we talk about the specific data that we use, and that's why I'm excited that you all approved the panorama recommendation, because now the students are actually going to take their own survey instead of the old tool that we used previously.
So here's and this may be a question just for clarity, so it caused me thinking, when you're talking about, like, as an example, chronic absenteeism, right? You're gonna go, here's the data to one of the 2 top companies, and that's gonna be whatever data we're having to collect in on that. By grade, by school, by K-12, K6, K5, whatever, K5, K6, 8, high school, by ethnicity, by gender, however it might get, you just upload that data, and then they will work to figure out how deep people wanna go. For option number 3, someone has to pre-set up what those they're gonna be going into and begin to make those images for each one of those potential exploration points, right?
So the data will already be there, it's just we'll have to do the drill down ourselves to get to that image,
And you-
then pull the image and put it on the website.
Right, so you have to like intentional
Yep.
decide which ones, whereas
So
if
the-
someone just goes up
right.
to the other websites, they're almost creating on the fly the image that the rosette or the pie chart that they're looking at. Whereas someone would almost have to say, well, I don't see this chart on here, then Holly would have to go, okay, you're right, that's a great one, let's go make the chart and put it on our website.
So RJ, I do agree with you. I think the lens I'm viewing it as is, you know, we talk about transparency a lot, and this is sort of our transparency. And transparency means different things to different people. So this would give a greater bandwidth of people in our community to be able to access the level of details that they might want without having to make requests all the time, but, well, I wanna see to this level, or, I mean, you're never gonna make everybody happy no matter what tool we use, but this seems like this might hit a bigger cross-section of people to hit the, whatever sweet spot they're looking for when it comes to the level of information they wanna obtain.
Does anyone feel the need to reach out to community and see what they want? I mean, is that necessary? We've never asked the community, what are you looking for when you're looking at data? Is that worth it with a price tag of this amount to see if it's even something that's necessary? Or do you guys feel like you've heard about that? I've not explored that with any, I have no lean in on that personally, so. But do we want to engage with the community and see what they would like? Since they're the ones that are accessing it?
You're saying like a survey we would send out? or
I
something?
don't know how that works, but yeah, I guess maybe a survey, I don't know.
I mean, I think part,
Feedback time, I don't know.
yeah, my initial thought is along the line of what Tom was talking about earlier, is kind of a part of the development of the strategic plan process. There's kind of specific things we've already been told, and like what may be up for discussion to kind of ask and say, hey, maybe by our next meeting, here's the list of the things that the strategic plan seems to imply that we would already kind of have, crop and absenteeism, this, that might be those initial sets of charts. And maybe that can give a little bit of framework of, okay, right now we're talking about 17 of them with 3 data sets below hand. Or we're talking about 17 of them with 95 data sets below them that
We can't do with.
we can't potentially do on our own.
I mean, if we have data that we can look at that was taken from those sit-downs, maybe that's the approach we need to take first, to say like, how many points do we have? How deep does the community actually wanna go?
Reasonable.
That was not an area of focus, so there's not gonna be very specific feedback for that. The feedback with regard to, it was more focused on communication from the district to stakeholders, which is where we got our feedback. In regards to a specific, to your point about the dashboard itself, there's not gonna be really any feedback in that.
Not for that, but I'm saying,
Oh.
I guess what I understood from what Craig was saying was use those conversations to say, here was the feedback, you know, there was this concern, it was attendance and that, like, is there a need to have, are there like legitimately from the stuff you guys took in from the community conversations?
Absolutely, that is what the plan is.
Yeah, so just.
So if you
what
were
are
to
the-
look at our.
So what we have, can that be done on this? Like what you took in, can we put it here with what we have, or would we absolutely have to use an outside company to get deeper into different levels?
So this goes back to, I think what Holly was trying to explain is that if we go with the in-house version, we don't have the staffing power to get as adaptive and flexible as I think you see in the other companies and their features.
That's kind of like one snapshot.
It would be,
Right, no,
yeah.
I get that.
But I think you're saying like, can we provide the extra layers and everything? What we would have to do is curate the data to think about each, like, think of like a photo book, you know, like the old photo books, right? They're one picture right there. We would have to create page after page with all those templates, and we could do it, but we don't have the current, we wouldn't be able to, pull staff off of their projects right now to do that on a regular basis, is what I'm saying.
So the people who are on the steering committee, you guys, and the people who are involved in taking in that data, do you feel that we can appropriately communicate with our community what they were looking for from those surveys and all that from this website that we have already?
Well, the way I look at it is, we can communicate, for sure. We can put a version out there.
Okay,
But I think what we found is, and demonstrated by the use of the previous dashboard, was there was no engagement. And so the way I look at it is, getting the data is gonna be the most important thing. But I think if you put a right site, visually, make it easy to use, easy to understand, that's the direction I think that they want to, from the feedback. The last site was, well, one, it wasn't really updated that often, and two, to me, it was kind of hard to understand, really. And one, the other thing was, maybe not all the metrics were were what they wanted. So, but that's part of the strategic plan, was to get that feedback and say, what are the stuff we're gonna do. So, that's my perspective, but Tom, one other question, so back to the resources, like, are you feel comfortable that we have the people in place to be able to populate this? Like, collect the data and be able to,
Yes.
populate the sites?
So it's already being done, and I did meet with Jean Marie, who's the one that already puts the data up to all the other sites. And she said that just a couple times a year, whenever those frequencies happen, for whenever the test results and data come out, when she puts the information, it literally would just be an upload, because they take the same file format that she's already pushing up to like 5Lab and.
Yeah, because I think you can make this as pretty as all get out, but if you're not updating it and with accurate data, you're just gonna lose everybody.
It would be updated, either any one of these, it would be updated at the same, whenever the information is available.
Holly, if we went with one of the first two vendors, I mean, is it a year, 1-year contract?
So, yes, they're 1-year contracts, they of course encourage 5-year or something, the length of the plan.
Of course.
To keep a consistency, and so discounts along the way, but we could do a 1-year.
I mean, so kind of where I'm going to with Rob is we're trying to get more engagement. I mean, we could try it for a year or two and see if, and then you could survey people, like, how do you like the new website? Is it working for you? And I mean, if we're trying to poll people,
But I would say, if that was the case, I would probably go with like the RJ trial of
Yeah.
just putting up the 15 data points that we found are most important, that were shared through all the feedback to the strategic plan. Find whatever those data points are, truancy, all of those, then create the dashboard, put it out there. Hey, everybody, here's this dashboard, here's all the information, it ties back to our strategic plan, follow along as we track this year over year. And if nobody's looking at it, then maybe we go with a company to help us create more lively engagement, because we're hearing that people are like, it's stale, it's boring, it's just pictures on a page, I want more than that. Is an option.
I will say the engagement thing means something. My company does some things like with facility assessments, where we like determine when the end of life of equipment is. I know, stellar, exciting, right? But we have bar charts that we do that talk about how much you're gonna spend year over year and year. That's fine, it's great, but we use a product called Power BI that comes as a part of it, that does these super interactive rosettes, so you can click on it and click on it, click on it. I can bore a board member to tears, but as soon as I put that rosette up and I click on it and it spins and it opens and it does things, everybody gets immediately engaged.
you're getting excited just talking about it.
I mean, because I'm trying to keep away. No, yeah, it's kind of quite amazing about how it's, like, just changed the course of being able to digest the data for people as well. Now,
Holly, can I ask a quick question for Holly here?
Yeah.
Holly, can you remind me, because I think you covered this with me, sorry. Do the vendor products have the ability to track clicks onto the website, like landing visit sites?
We can, it's a full
They do.
dashboard
That's
for
what I was-
staff, I shouldn't use the word dashboard, but interactive report.
and we do too.
Program that we could pull how often they went to each of the different layers within the pages.
I mean, for me, like the question you asked earlier, right? We have a 5-year or so strategic plan. Do you take year one to say, okay, we're gonna collect some data, so we know what we're gonna put up there and everything else, we put it up there, and the thing that we've already been doing, and it costs us effectively no extra money, right? And if that is digestible and reachable, and we feel it's not, and then we go get some input if we need to about are we communicating well enough in a feedback loop later, then we say, okay, that's not working, maybe we do need to level up our game a bit. That's the real question here from what I'm hearing before, from the discussion.
And there's something to be said of the fact that this is a hot topic now, and we'll probably get more people looking at it when
Right
we
now,
launch it.
then we will later.
Right, so do we want to launch with, here's the 15 things we think you wanna look at? Or do we wanna launch engagement with our community with something that is dynamic and interactive that they might want to come back to look at over year?
I mean, that's a really good point.
So, I mean, if people wanna continue talking about this, I think for me personally, what I would like to do is maybe, we don't have to vote on this tonight. We had a good discussion. I might do like a little personal poll of people that, you know, hey, what do you think of the district website, engagement, and do a little personal, more research on it. And then come back the next meeting and might have a little more anecdotal
Okay.
thoughts on it.
Everybody generally in agreement with that?
Yeah, I'd like to go in and
It's fine with
I'm
me.
gonna be honest, I don't think I've ever clicked on all the stuff, so I would like to see what's in there and what we're actually working with right now.
Well, and Holly, you brought up a really good point, right? There's a chance that we say, hey, we got this new communication tool, and we're showing you all this new entry data, and they pull it up, and they look at it and go,
Yeah.
it looks just the same as it did last time, I
Right.
don't think it's new at all.
We're
You know?
promising you transparency and
Yeah, like,
engagement.
nobody knew if it was updated or anything else,
But
okay.
we also do have the opportunity to
And look what we got for you.
pivot before a year too, don't we? Like,
Oh,
if
yeah.
we're like, whoa, this really isn't working the way we thought, we can always pivot to something different. If we came back next meeting, we're like, let's see how it goes. I mean,
Yeah, Danny, I agree with you. I think if the board lands on wanting to use one of these outside groups, I don't think my recommendation would be locking us into a 5-year agreement or anything like that. Just for your point that you're making, yeah. Okay, so if I'm hearing, because I saw the head nods, we'll just bring this back as an action item and discussion again at September's board meeting, right?
Yep,
Okay,
all right, thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you for the conversation.
I do want to say, I think Tony was excited when he mentioned asset end of life.
I was, actually.
I thought it was the reference to rosettes.
Well, both.
Rosettes.
Unfortunately, my
You like
budget
data.
presentation doesn't have any rosettes.
Oh,
But I do promise that it'll be quite engaging.
You like data, pie charts.
All right, Tony, let her rip.
All right, I'm gonna connect to the projector so that I can navigate through the documents momentarily.
Yeah, so this is our final review of it, it is up for adoption tonight.
So it's one action, but it includes two components. One is the official adoption of the budget, and that budget includes fund transfers as well that are outlined in.
And that can be done under one singular motion, correct? Okay. Just killing time here while you get connected.
Appreciate that,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sing us a song, Craig.
No, you do not want that. We'd all like to sing happy birthday, go for it.
I'm gonna grab a water, see if I need one.
Can I have a Diet Coke?
Sure, anybody.
I'm okay, thank you.
Yes, Garcon?
All right, just a quick run through of the components of the budget. It's changed slightly since you saw it last. Overall deficit of 1.2 million. However, there is a surplus in the operating funds. We estimate that the ending fund balance would be some 64 million, and the fund balance to revenue ratio would be about 48%. You'll notice, just comparing to prior years, overall revenues would be $133 million. That's down slightly from the prior year, where it was 133.9. And the reason why there is a decline in revenue is for two reasons. One, we spent the last of our federal funding for the pandemic, so that money is spent, we're not getting any more of it. And we're gonna start to see a slight decline in property taxes as we're paying off our bonds, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. Meanwhile, our expenditures will increase from $130 million to 134. So that gives us the difference of 1.2. And you can see what the net surplus was for the prior 3 years. Be very clear that the deficit is not in our operating funds, it's in capital expenditures. And as you recall, each year we transfer money from our operations and maintenance fund to the capital projects fund, and we use that fund as a savings account or kind of a piggy bank because of the size and scope and timing of capital projects. I'll show you more about that in a bit. So the deficit really is driven by spending a fund balance from the capital projects fund. And it's intended to be a temporary thing. We're gonna see an increase in salaries and benefits. That's not a correct number. I think that it wasn't a 39.2% increase in exempt staff. It's probably a 9.2% increase. So that's an error. But there's a sizable increase in paraprofessionals in terms of wages and in terms of positions. So we had a lot of vacancies in the prior year, so we're comparing actual spending to what we budget. So that's going to increase by 11.4%. There's a moderate increase overall in teachers' salaries. We'll talk more about that briefly. And then significant increase in benefits because we're bringing the 403B and 457B match online for teachers. So stay tuned for more discussion on that. Overall, we're increasing staffing by 11.4 FTE. So despite our enrollment declines, we'll have more staff. And that is for specialized programs and for administrative support. And so overall, we'll see a staffing increase of 4.2%. Enrollment will be expected to be, or enrollment as of the first day of school was 5,181. That was the actual number that we use to monitor student enrollment for the year. That we use for what was called the fall housing report. That's on October 1st. But that looks like it's going to be very near our enrollment for the year. That is a little bit more than what we had projected in our enrollment projections that I shared with you last fall. So that's some 21 students more, and that's primarily at the elementary level. So we have more students moving into town than we expected, and more than birth rates alone would lead us to predict we see. So that's, I think, good news.
Is that seemingly spread pretty evenly across the district, or?
No, they never show up.
Wish.
Yeah, no, it is not evenly distributed. No, they always show up in seemingly the wrong spots. Overall, however, our pupil to staff ratio will go from 7.9 to 7.6. And just a few years ago, it was 8.2. So we're hiring more staff, we have fewer students, that ratio is improving, and our class sizes, I would argue, looking at average class sizes, have never been better in our history, at least since we have been in modern times monitoring those as closely as we do. That doesn't mean that there aren't issues with class sizes here and there. It's just, again, kids showing up in pockets that you know don't necessarily have control over, or if you add another section, it just doesn't make sense to have classes that small because it's not efficient. So overall, I'm going to jump around here to just give you some better insight into what is in this document. Go to the profile. Overall, you'll see that we have what would be a financial rating from the state of Illinois. The State Board of Education analyzes school district finances. Years ago, when I first became the chief school business official for Batavia, we were on the kind of watch list. We were almost in mourning status because our finances were so poor. And over the course of these last 10 or so years, they've improved quite dramatically. In fact, for the last 2 years, and will be this year, we expect to have a 4.0 rating, which is the highest rating that you can get. So that's wonderful.
So
Our bond rating.
Do you just put 5 up there so that we can try to achieve for something, or is it 4 as high as we get?
4 as high as you get.
Okay.
4, it's like a grade point average. 4 is the highest you can get. There's no honors weighting or anything. Our bond rating has improved from the 3rd notch to the 2nd with S&P, so we have a AA plus bond rating. Our fund balances have improved quite dramatically, and that's one of the reasons why we have a 4.0. We're not issuing what are called tax anticipation warrants, where we were doing payday loans. We used to have to borrow money to get through the year so that we could pay our bills. We don't do that anymore. And a lot of one of the key reasons why our finances have improved is because we've been able to contain our spending and benefits. So for a number of years, our spending would be, on average, it would increase for benefits 15%. Some years it would be as little as 12, and others it was as much as 18%. And you can imagine benefits are very expensive, and when they're increasing at that clip, it puts a lot of stress on the system. And in the last 5 years, we've been able to keep that increase to either zero for most of these years, and this year we're gonna see a 5% increase in our insurance rates. So that's a success story. Overall, wanted to show you in terms of what our expenses are on a per student basis. So this is our, what we call our operating expenses per pupil. The green line is us. So in 2020, you saw our operating expense per pupil was almost $15,000. That was obviously a very strange year. That number was lower than it should have been because there were a lot of unrealized expenditures in that year, because I think you remember what happened. There was a lot of things that in the last half and quarter of the year that there was expenses that we didn't see come to fruition. However, in 2021, we saw a lot of expenses come to fruition because we were dealing with blended learning, hybrid learning, and we also had a lot of money from the feds to deal with the pandemic. So that increased things, and you see it kind of check and increasing to what I expect to be right around $20,000 in the current fiscal year. And we're comparing ourselves here to the Kane County average, the average of spending, operating expense spending per student in all the other districts in Kane County and in the state of Illinois. So for 2022 and 2023, we were a little less. We don't have the numbers yet for 24 and 25, but I would expect we're on par with those,
So we were less.
slightly, yeah. But in 21, we were significantly more. We're gonna continue to see pressure on this as our student enrollment continues to decline. We expect that it will stabilize somewhere in the next 5 years, but it's simple math, right? If your expenditures are going up and you're dividing that by the number of students you have and that's going down, you're gonna see increases in your operating expense per pupil. That's not unique to Batavia. That's happening all across the state of Illinois. Actually, all across the country.
Well, it costs the same to heat the high school, whether there's 1,800 students or 1,600 students.
Yes. I do worry about hiring more staff, and I do get this out there. There are definitely needs and escalating needs and expectations that we need to meet the needs of students, and we do need to have more staff to do that. But as we have fewer and fewer students, that becomes challenging. And so what I always talk about is we have to stay on the glide path. And for reasons I'll talk about momentarily is our only lever for new money is from local property taxes. That's the only place where we're getting new money. We do get, I guess I'm not being fair to the state of Illinois, since we're tier 4, we're at tier 4 funding, so that the state of Illinois does calculations every year to determine what is adequate funding for school districts. And it's a wonderful formula because it's equitable. But for us, however, they have determined that we have adequate funding. And so what we get is a whopping, literally, $5,000 in new money from the state of Illinois. As
That
a
was
tier 4.
$5,000, not $50,000, not $500,000.
$5,000, literally $5,000 in new money from the state of Illinois. And we
How much
can't
is that
expect
per
any more
student?
money from them to support general education because
Less
we
than a
have
penny.
adequate resources here locally to take care of it. So the only place that we're going to get more revenue to deal with the needs that we face is from local property taxes. But there's good news on that front I want to show you. Here's the property taxes since 2019. The green bars are average market value of a home. I'm doing market value in 2023. So the median market value of a home in Batavia was $399,000 in 2023. So if you ratchet that back based off of the average increases in our equalized assessed value, that same home would have been worth very near $346,000 in 2019. And that home would have paid $6,668 in property taxes. In the current year, they're gonna be paying $7,329. But next year, as we start to pay off these bonds, we're gonna see that bond and interest payment decline significantly. It'll have itself. And we're gonna see a decline in property taxes in 2020, in the levy year 2024. Just keep in mind, this is what confuses me all the time. There's school years, calendar years, tax years, levy years, and all these things combined. Suffice to say, people are saying, well, I was expecting my taxes to go down. They will, it just, that tax bill hasn't, that levy year hasn't happened yet. So when we do the 2024 tax levy, we'll levy for yet less, and when people pay their taxes in 2025, they'll see smaller tax bills.
I have a
Generally.
question, though, sorry.
Yeah,
So the green bar is the average,
median.
the median, and the red, so if your home is $399, is the 7,000 go to the school, or that's just your taxes?
That's just going to the school. Those are great questions, thank you for asking, and I gloss over those details, but these are school taxes.
Okay.
Going back to staffing momentarily, let's look first of all at our staffing to student ratio. I mentioned that earlier. You can see our student enrollment in the blue bars, and then there's two lines that cross them. The yellowish orangish line is the pupil to teacher ratio, so those are teachers in our classrooms. You can see that our ratio was 12.9 students to every teacher in 2021, and now that is down to 12.1. And that is a marked difference in that span. It seems like fractions, but that's a huge difference. And the same for the pupil to staff ratio. That's all the people that work for the school districts. That's going from 8.2 in 2021 to 7.6 in 2025.
So hang on, so for 20, so the budget for 2025, you have the 12.1 for the pupil to teach. But in your thing, I'm sorry, it says 7.9 ratio student to teacher ratio.
So 7.9 you'll see is, thank you for paying close attention, I appreciate that. And I do make mistakes, so, you know, I found one earlier, so I apologize. But here's the 7.9. In 2024, our pupil to staff ratio was 7.9. And in 2025, it'll be 7.6. The broader trend,
The 12 is a teacher.
2021 is coming down from 8.2.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, so like, you said the 12.1 is this teacher,
Yes.
but in your report, it said 7.9.
There's two different ratios, and I only mentioned the staffing, the general staffing ratio in the summary.
I think I don't,
I think I know what you're talking about here.
yeah, on page 6.
Is it a typo?
That's a typo, I think, right there. Is that what you're talking about? That should
So
say
it
teacher.
says, well, right here, and pupil to teacher, oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Staff, the staff. and
Yes,
staff.
yeah, got it.
You got it? Does that
got
make sense?
Yeah, got it. I got it, thank you.
make a mistake?
I apologize.
No,
No,
we got it.
you got it.
This is why I print stuff.
But, and so just to be clear, it's a teacher is considered a certified staff.
Yes.
It's your teachers, your instructional coaches.
And the green bar is everybody who works here. Looking at, we talked about what's driving this deficit. Just capital outlay. And part of the conversation that we had last month and these transfers, wanted to make sure it was clear what's happening. In this graph here, I'm showing these blue bars, which are the allocations or the transfers to the capital projects fund. So our contributions each year into the piggy bank. You see we made a big one in 2023, and that number is declining in 24 and 25. In 23, we're gearing up for the work that we did at Alice Gustafson and J.B. Nelson School and a number of other things. So we made bigger contributions. And the size of that work and the timing of it was such that some of those bills really came due in 2024, and you can see we spent the lion's share of that here. But I wanted to compare what's going into the account, what's coming out. Sometimes we have to save money because some of these projects are so big for a couple of years to be able to afford them. And sometimes the timing of when we get the bills and when the project or when the work actually happens, we can't always predict exactly which fiscal year it's.
I think that's an important point, because we're trying to live within our means, so we're saving before we start.
Unfortunately, contractors don't take IOUs. So they do accept checks and cash, but we don't pay in cash, of course. But we have to have money there to pay those bills.
You don't show up with a suitcase, then?
No.
Cash discount?
I forgot, I may have asked you this, but by law, do we have to have a balanced budget?
If you don't have a balanced budget, you have to file what's called a deficit reduction plan with the state of Illinois. But that's only for the operating funds.
Okay.
So technically, with what the state of Illinois looks at, they're looking for a balanced budget with the operating funds, and that's exactly what we have.
Okay. But so this 1.2 million deficit, would that be considered not balanced then, or?
I consider it not balanced, yes.
Okay, but we're gonna bring the funds in from another source?
We have the money in the bank. We're spending money that's in the bank. We're spending more, the money that's in the bank, our fund balance,
Yeah.
We're spending more of it than we're taking in a given year because we were planning to. And, we're not overspending what's there.
Okay.
Does that I'm not doing a good job explaining, unfortunately.
Well, I'm saying, you're gonna.
Money's in the
You're
bank.
gonna be compliant.
Yes, we're compliant. We don't have a deficit as far as the state of Illinois is concerned, where we have to make adjustments to how we spend money. And, yeah, hopefully. And this is the list of the capital projects that we'll be tackling here in fiscal '25. Now, in fiscal '26, that's when we'll start paying for some of the work that we're doing we're planning to do at HC Storm School and at Louise White. Actually, Louise White wouldn't take place until '27, but there'll be significant outlay for that work. You'll see the bids come back for that probably in November, where we would ask you to approve that, even though they are not captured exactly in this budget. Other questions or thoughts that you have?
Yeah, didn't we just resurface the tennis courts?
Yeah, that was like, I think that was 9 years ago.
It just
And
seems like
they're in rough shape.
Just
One?
Tennis courts.
Oh, I could,
seems
me
like,
and Chris can speak to that.
are they bad?
They're bad.
But doesn't it seem like we just redid them?
They're terrible. They're terrible. We can't host tournaments.
Just so the board can keep in mind too, last December, we approved the Warm Safe Drive Plan, right, which had a 5-year projection and vision for the capital projects we needed to do. You know, as we come towards the back end of what Tony is sharing and presenting to you, we're gonna have to keep in mind that we will be coming back to you at some point with a new 5-year more plan. Because, as you know, I mean, everything is on a cycle of maintenance. And so, you know, we have that coming. We're continually monitoring. I know Tony and Mark are constantly in touch with what's needed, and so are our building leaders. So, just to keep that in mind.
I did forget to mention kind of the biggest areas where we're seeing increases. One is our retirement incentive for the BEA. We had a lot of teachers who retired last year, and so one of the reasons why we're seeing only a 2.5% increase on teacher salaries is because a lot of teachers retired. We incentivized them to do so, and the teachers that are coming in behind them are newer teachers. They don't cost as much. So that is working. But that doesn't mean people are getting 2.5% raises. They're getting usually much more than that. And then the other thing that you'll see here is regular programs K-12, and you'll see there's a 49% increase there. That's a sizable number. It's about $1 million. A lot of that is driven by the new matching program coming online. And so that is a very innovative program that's, as far as I know, is unique to Batavia, where the board is matching contributions to 403B and 457Bs that teachers make up to $1,000. And that $1,000 is geared toward younger teachers that are making less, so the less you make, the more you get, and it phases out the more money you make. And the reason why that's important is because all of our new teachers are what are called Tier 2 in the pension system, so the pension benefits aren't anywhere near what Tier 1 was. So if you were hired after January 1st of 2011, you're considered Tier 2, and your pension benefits and the years that you can retire, it's completely different than what has traditionally been the case. And these individuals will have to save for their retirement. And what we're trying to encourage them to do is to do that when they start working for us right away.
If I can just
Not to
add
wait.
something, sorry, Tony, we didn't talk
Please,
about this,
go
but
ahead.
it's really exciting for me personally because during our intakes every year, I always try to talk about save for yourself, 403Bs, 403Bs. And a lot of people, I think they hear that, but they don't act on it. Now they're acting on it because we've incentivized them to do so. And so I feel like we're setting up our new staff on a very good trajectory. We actually had, I had a teacher who, we have a teacher here who's transferred, who's from a different district, probably worked 8 or 10 years elsewhere. And he's like, I have never seen a district show us and basically encourage us to get a 403B in my life. And he's worked at a couple school districts. And he's like, and I'm a 10-year person and I haven't had one, but I'm finally setting one up. So this is good for our staff long-term, and I'm really excited about what we're seeing.
Yeah. So I am very excited about it too, and it's something that I do brag about with my colleagues, because I think this is exactly what we need to do to help people who are in that tier level. Another item that's increasing dramatically, I would say, is the pupil transportation, activities and athletics. That's increasing sizably, but that is paying for the activity buses, the after-school activity buses that take students home after school activities at both the high school and the middle school.
Is that well used?
Yes, there's certain routes that are used more than others, and there's certain times of years that it's used more and less, depending on what's going on in the seasons, but.
Good.
We need to do a better job, I think, of tracking that and probably reporting to you how well it's used.
I'd like to know, because I remember asking about it years ago and I was told no. And then
Those buses, besides those scheduled routes and times, they are used for other stuff at other times then, or,
These are yellow buses.
oh, yellow bus?
Yeah.
So we're paying.
It's not the,
Okay, all right, okay.
These are the contractors.
Okay.
We use the word, we have activity buses, the yellow buses we call activity buses too, so that gets really confusing with
Yeah.
this.
Okay, all right.
not the, I know
Yeah.
which ones you're talking
Yeah.
about, but yeah.
But I would be happy to entertain any other questions that you might have before you.
So enrollment is up 0.4% this year. And last year it was up quite a bit, right? We had a big increase?
We had more than I expected last year too. Our enrollment technically is down, but it's more than what we projected it to be down.
Right. So it's more, so what do we project it? Because you said, well, because I thought it said that we had 0.4% of an increase this year. Was that from last year?
I think he was
It's
projecting.
0.4 more than they projected.
Right,
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
projecting 5161, we ended up at, so there's a little.
So enrollment was last year, if I just go and
I
grab
thought it was
this,
like, yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a big number.
5248.
yeah.
That was an official number that came from the fall housing report. Right now, I'm using a temporary number in 25. The fall housing report we capture on October 1st of every year.
Okay.
So the 5181 is how many students we had on the first day of school when I went into the system. I expect it's gonna be very similar to that when I go in on October 1st.
Is that typical language to be used? Because I would want to know just overall whether enrollment is it up or down? But that's, in a way, to me, could be misleading or misinterpreted.
I think it's important as a distinction from a budget driver. So like, since so many things are kind of hinging on number of students from budgets, then you project a certain amount of budgets because that sets the denominator for kind of so many of these things we're looking at, that when it's up or down a little bit, it does that. But I agree with you, like, is there another statement that just says, okay, like in this, that might be student enrollment, this 5181, we projected 5160, like it kind of says, you know, that's a year-over-year overall increase, but it is less of a decrease by 0.4% than expected or something.
I could add another statement in there. My approach is always as few words as possible because I struggle to get people to read this. And I find that the more words you add, the less likely that people read. So that's the philosophy I have. The premise here being is I'm referencing section C7 in the document so that you can see the full picture. But it does state enrollment is 0.4% higher than projected. I could say enrollment what last year was. And that isn't just a couple of words. But I'm very miserly when it comes to words.
And then the right above it, the 11.4, that's just any full-time staff? Or is that only for the specialized programs and administrative? Like, was the 11 only for them, or was it 11
So
across
there's
the
two
board?
ratios there that is referenced. It's saying the pupil to staff ratio is 7.6, down from 7.9 the prior year.
No, I'm talking about the one above. The
Staffing plan
full-time
increase.
staff, you have 11.4, the very top,
Oh,
where it says 7
Yeah.
point,
FTEs.
the 11.4 full-time employees, a
Mm-hmm.
total of 679. It says addressing needs in special programs and administrative. So the 11.4, were those only for the specialized program or administrative, or was that just everything?
Everything.
This year, we
Everything.
just added 11.
yep. The primary areas that it went to were specialized programs and administrative support, but that was everything. But you can, if you click on section C6, you'll see exactly where the staffing changed. So we can go there briefly. So here's the overall numbers. In the chart, you see we were at 658, we're up to 659 or 679 in 2025, and it's broken out by members of the BEA, members of BESPA, and everybody else. Other questions?
So my high-level takeaways from this, and I appreciate this, Tony, this document is a great document because it does summarize a tremendous amount of information, but basically I know we're technically not balanced because we took fund balance for capital projects, but we're paying our bills. Our student ratios are as strong as, student to teacher and staff are as strong as they've been, depending on your perspective. They're lower than they have been in years. And we do have money to do what we've identified as some immediate capital projects without distorting the ratio of that fund where it would put us in jeopardy if something catastrophic happened. So we have a little buffer there. And with bonds expiring, the burden we're asking of our local tax base will go down. Are those all accurate statements?
Yeah, those are all accurate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025 budget, including its respective fund transfers as presented.
So moved.
So moved by Rob,
Second.
second by Aaron. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Sliver? Yes.
Yes.
Clock? Yes. Kilburg?
Yes.
Meadows?
Yes.
Arlandu?
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next is staff and board comments. Tom, is there anything you'd like to share this evening?
Yes, all right, so, as we are all aware, we finished day 5 of being back in school, and one of the things I wanted to make sure I drew our attention to, board, is a big thank you and gratitude, appreciation to all of our custodians, our maintenance teams, our technology teams, the RJAC team here in this building, our building secretaries, and all the other support staff for all the work that they did in preparing to open our buildings, for what you even heard from our BA president and our BESPA president, was a really successful opening week. I think, having visited and having our team, leadership teams out and about in the buildings, I heard really good reports coming back on how we started the year. So I just want to thank all those people and the hands that go into making that happen, right? Just doesn't happen magically overnight. I also want to thank our new bus company. They're transitioning in and taking our account. They are fully staffed with drivers, which not every school district is able to report. And having been on site and meeting the management team and meeting all of the drivers, which was fun, they're also able to supply backup drivers to our routes. So right now, they're still working on some of the logistical, things. Drivers are learning how to take some of the routes because the roads are now being populated with student drivers and parent drivers. So it's a little different than when they were practicing over the summer, where the streets were a little bit lighter. But I think they've worked all that out now at this point. I also want to thank our food services team. That's a new company as well with Organic Life. And as promised and delivered by Josh and his entire committee of students and other staff members, it's being well received, and so really appreciate all their hustle.
Burritos.
Yes, as some of our children have reported back to the board already, that they're happy with the new food. But they really took to heart the concerns that were being shared by our students on the service delivery, quality delivery. So I really appreciate our food vendors, hustling like that. Okay, so one of the things, just a reminder, looking forward to seeing any of you, if you're able to make it, to the Corn Boil this Friday. You'll see my team and I will be there too, just supporting our, local groups that'll be represented there. Give a little shout out to Beefy, support our foundation. They'll have a tent. And I just want to close with, piggybacking off something Drew said, with the idea of how we opened the year last week. at our opening Institute Day. One of the messages that was shared is that as an organization, moving forward is a key aspect to making sure that as we look at our strategic plan, using the growth mindset, not of all just the individual talents and abilities of our staff, of our students, of our leaders, but as an organization, if we want to actually move the needle as an organization, is doing it together with a collective organizational growth mindset. And I'm really excited to see how we're gonna move that needle together. We've already been working on a lot of new collaborative structure ideas that exist within how we do business, but also just bringing some new ideas to the table and considering it this way, that the more opportunities we focus on, more solutions we'll see and the more progress we'll see for our students and just the overall success of our district. So with that, I'd like to just say, let's make it a great 114th year of BPS 101. I had to sneak in that little historian thing. That's all I have.
All right.
Thank you.
Board comments. Would anyone like to volunteer to start? Otherwise, I'll pick an end of the table.
I'll start.
Thank you, sir.
I have nothing to say. I yield my time to Mr. Orlando.
Wow.
Just echo some of Tom's comments for the start of the school year. Some of the feedback I received mostly from my daughter who started her senior year at BHS it was very smooth, enjoyable experience. Kind of joked about the food, but she did comment that she really liked the food in the cafeteria. Thank you to the staff, administration for getting that set up and organized, and I think it went really well. So, and I want to wish all the students, teachers, staff have a great year. Looking forward to hearing, especially at these meetings, looking forward to hearing some great successes and accomplishments through the course of the school year here. And then just real quick, I'm transitioning to the Resource Responsibility Advisory Council, and I think, Josh, you got the meetings all set up for the whole year, I think, so. Got that in the calendar, and Steve's invited me to the stipend committee as well, so we'll start on that. And made contact with Principal Modaf at GMS. I'm gonna meet with him on Friday, and we're gonna set up some time for me to interact with the community there.
All right, I'll jump over me. Go ahead.
Just welcome back to all the students and Batavia BPS staff. I just hope you guys have a safe and healthy and fantastic school year. That's it.
I'll use my usual comment where I want to thank everybody who came to the board meeting tonight, everybody who reached out. Again, it does inform our discussions. I want to welcome the students back. I want to welcome all the new students. I want to welcome all the new teachers and staff. We have quite a few. I attended the welcome event on the 12th, and I always kind of marvel that the first day for teachers sort of resembles the first day for students, where they're all started getting back in the groove, and you can see the excitement and a little bit of anxiety getting started, but once they get in the flow, it's great to see. So I want to welcome them. I also, Tom kind of stole my thunder, but, that first day of school, I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety, because getting that machine cranked up again with the buses and the lunches and making sure all the tech works, it's a tremendous amount of work to get to that point. So everybody, it really does take an entire team to get that accomplished. So thank you to all those folks for their hard work. And I'll just sort of end with, we have a lot of kickoff events. The Corn Boil on Friday is a big one. A lot of PTOs are starting up, but I think when we think of like new students and starting new, we really encourage students, if you see a new student, to reach out to them and make them feel welcome. And one thing I would encourage members of the community is, I think Kevin said we're a little bit like Mayberry sometimes, and that can be good and bad sometimes, because we get comfortable with the faces we're used to seeing. But if you see a new parent at pickup or at a PTO event or at the Corn Boil, those people want to engage, but sometimes it's hard to. So I would say, be that welcome wagon and welcome them to come join you or sit by you at a game or an event, because those people want to engage, but that first contact can still be hard. So let's try to make sure that our families feel welcome, especially those new faces we see. And just I am excited for the new year to go, and go Bulldogs.
Well, you guys did great. I don't really have much to add. One thing I want to say, Drew, your son was probably there, but at Storm, you know, we took my son and we stayed and chit chatted a little bit, and the kindergartners were all like gathered outside. And, you know, these aren't even our kids, like the people I was with, and we started to get teary-eyed because they like turn around and blow a kiss, and I'm like, oh my God.
Was Drew crying?
Were you crying?
No.
I just passed you some tissues.
Never.
It was precious, and the organization that they did for that, it was so good. I mean, there's so many people coming up to the building, but it's so fun at the beginning of the year. It kind of like sizzles down a little bit as the year goes on, but you just see so many people and everyone's excited. The kids are just like, coming out, and it's been so great. So really thank you to everyone who's put in the time and effort to start the year off, and I hope all of our students are feeling welcomed and kind of settling in a little bit. I think you guys kind of covered everything else. Oh, I did want to say I am going to meet with what Rob was talking about, his assignment. I will be meeting with Dr. Smith at the high school, and I look forward to that because I feel like it's really not a place that I've really spent much time. You know, like, I mean, I haven't been to every elementary school, but that is just, it seems very far away. I mean, but Allie is in 7th grade and we'll be there, but I'm like, oh.
Sooner than you think.
I don't, I mean, she sent me like how to get inside. I'm like, I don't know, this is kind of scary, but I do look forward to doing that and then working with you on student ambassadors.
Yes.
I think that'll be really cool to really highlight our student voices, and hopefully we kind of get all of the different levels of the district, all the different grades and stuff, but I'm excited. So hopefully, like I said, everyone's settling in and feeling good so far. I'm good, thank you.
Only thing I'll close with is just, you know, welcome to all the new teachers that are now a member of the BEA, as well as all the other staff with BESPA and administration that are here, and the new students that are with us, so that's exciting. Everybody's starting, and I appreciate you guys mentioning all the kind of new committees you're jumping into. So I got my invite for a couple of them, so I'm staying on the capital projects one, so you can't get rid of me that fast. But I also then went and met with Kristen over at AGS. So Rob, you have left some very, very big shoes to fill over there, because they spoke very highly of you. So I went over there, and there's almost some tears in mine, because my kids are long out of elementary school, so it was kind of fun seeing the differences a little bit between the schools, between Grace McWay, where my kids were there, and the kind of going on the blacktop, and all the kids kind of pulling in at once. And Kristen and her team did a really great job of making me feel welcome. I ran into Tony there, who gave me a little tour of the school, and it's kind of amazing, just like you're talking about settling in. We were remarking that, like, all the excitement outside, and we're in, and it was just like the quiet descended on the school, and the kids were just in it, and the teachers were on top of it, and it was just a really kind of like really nice settling down. Like, you kind of think the craziness continues. No, everybody was just engaged. It was really good, and I met a number of the PTO that was there as well, so it was kind of a good one-stop shop day for me. So I appreciate, though they had no intents on that efficiency, I appreciate it. So I will end it with saying thank you to everybody for the hard work they did to get everything up and running. That's not only the staff, but I also want to say, thank you to Tom and the administrative team for making sure the cogs are in the right spot and the wheels are spinning. So, thank you. We do have a closed session tonight. There is no intended board action after that closed session, so we will be moving to that. We can check in here if you so desire to sit around and wait, but I didn't think so. But you're more than welcome to. So we are moving into closed session. As I said, we do not have any action items. You're welcome to stay. Would you leave? Thank you very much for coming this evening. It's good to see you guys here. Thank you. All right. Get water break, bathroom, whatever you need to do.
We don't have to do anything?
Oh, no, yeah, I do. I totally forgot. Gosh, no.
Good catch, good
All right, so the time is 9:38. I will entertain a motion to move to closed session allowed under Open Meetings Act for the purpose of exception 5 ILCS 120C1. So moved by Raquel,
Second.
second by RJ. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Campus,
Yes.
Liger,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody.